Renewal Agency Budget Committee first meeting to order for Monday, April the 30th, 2012. Can I have a call to order? Kathy Steer, please.
Dick Anderson.
Here.
Gordon Eggleton.
Here.
Gary Ellingson.
Here.
Dennis Hoagland.
Here.
Gordon McLean.
Here.
Lenny Nelson. Here. Chester Norikis.
Here.
Henry Quant.
Here.
Dick Ricketts.
Here.
Sue Ryan.
Here.
Roger Sprague.
Here.
James Taylor. I believe he's absent and excused. Alex Ward.
Here.
And Susan Walke. Here.
And please stand and follow me with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to apologize to everyone for the late start, but I appreciate you waiting, delaying the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll take it out in your time. Welcome, Alex.
I appreciate it as well.
I'd like to remind everybody on the Budget Committee meeting this evening to please speak into your microphone so everyone can hear you. Our first order of business, election of the chair. Can I have a nomination for the chair of the Urban Renewal Budget Committee?
Mr. Chairman, I'd nominate Alex Ward to chair the Urban Renewal Budget Committee.
Second.
Do I hear any more nominations?
Chair, I'd move to close the nominations.
If there's no more further nominations,
Second.
if there are no more nominations, can we have a vote, please?
Vote for closing, or
A vote for closing?
okay?
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Now we take a vote. Now can we have a vote to vote for Alex Ward for election of the chair for the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Alex Ward is now the chair of the Lincoln City Urban Renewal Agency. Do I have any nominations for vice chair of the Lincoln City Urban Renewal Agency?
I'd like to nominate Gary Ellingson as vice chair.
Second.
Do I have any more nominations for...
I'd move to close the nominations.
Second.
All those in favor? Say aye. All those opposed? All those in favor of having Gary Ellingson vice chair for the Urban Renewal Agency, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Congratulations, Gary.
Oh, thank you.
Alex, it's all yours.
Okay. Let's see. I guess we have first on the agenda, and I'd like to apologize for my lateness, and thank you again for holding the meeting. First on the agenda is the budget message for David Hawker.
We're told to do that? Okay.
You can turn that over to me.
I know how to listen. So basically, I'm just going to really turn this over to Kurt Olson, the Urban Renewal Director, and be up here in a supportive role. I am the budget officer, but obviously with a director who's so intimately involved in the operations, I depend very heavily on him on the budget and the budget message. So, Kurt.
Good evening. We took the information that we received from the March workshop and the follow-up meetings, and then the worksheets that were submitted to develop the work plan and the projects that you see in this 2012-2013 budget. In both the Urban Renewal General Fund and the Loan Program Fund is funding for economic development. You'll see it listed in both of those areas in the budget. And we'll be bringing the elements of that of an economic development program to the agency here within in a very short time in one of the upcoming meetings. Agency members indicated to us that they had a desire to proceed with the Cutler-Keel sewer extension in the Cutler District, and also projects that were associated with the ODOT Nelscott Gaps Highway project. So as you know, there will be projects that the Urban Renewal Agency will undertake in order to kind of finalize the issues that are presented by ODOT when they complete their project. In addition, the preliminary design for the D-Lake undergrounding and improvements to the traffic signal at South First Street are funded in this budget. There are 2 projects that we hope to move forward this year that are hopefully that we get grant funding for, and those are the Schooner Point Bay Access Bay Walk. That's a walkway that's just north of the Bay House Restaurant. And the other one is for the development of the agency-owned property on Northwest 15th Street. In the property rehab program fund, the second fund that we have, we anticipate this year a loan repayments of about $120,000, and that's on the outstanding balance of about $460,000 that we have in outstanding rehabilitation loans. With the available fund reserves that we have, we've allocated about $460,000 towards new loans for this year, and we anticipate that we'll see some renewed interest in that program when we make some of the anticipated changes that we're looking at for the program. And then we also allocated about $400,000 for economic development in that fund that you'll see. The third fund that we have is the tax increment fund, and that's where the tax revenues are pledged for debt service repayment. I'm glad to go into the numbers in any more detail, as much detail as you wish, and also to address any specific questions that the committee might have.
Chairman? So I guess in going through the narrative, it's kind of the bigger picture, a lot of stuff yet to be decided upon, other than the kind of three projects or 4 in the initial opening paragraph. The other project lists that's in your narrative, this was in the budget message. Yeah, in the budget, okay. Budget message was more for education background, things that might be able to be done, if budgeted. Maybe you could help us, the committee, understand why these things are here. Kind of set some background.
Absolutely. I know you had some comments before.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
You're doing great.
So yeah, we took the information that we had and the list of projects that we had anticipated doing, and then the new project that came forward, undergrounding in D-Lake, and then we tried to figure out where we saw the most support. And so what you see in the budget message itself is projects that we just saw that really didn't receive a lot of support from the agency, and so we've listed those so that you can see which ones those are. And then we went through and talked a little bit about the projects that did seem to have funding, and we went through to our 3-year plan for finishing out urban renewal. As you all know, Urban Renewal Agency sunsets, the tax increment financing portion of urban renewal sunsets in 2014, June of 2014. So we have a 3-year plan to get to that time period, and we think that we can do the projects that you've talked about within that time frame with the funding that we have available to us.
I mean, for the public, I just want to underscore the fact that the agency has taken a step back and said, let's take a real hard look. Urban renewal is coming to a close. Let's take a real hard look at how we're going to spend the remaining dollars, and that's work in progress. And that's why this budget can't be extremely specific. In particular, I think one of the major issues that needs to be decided, because it's it's a big chunk of change, is undergrounding of overhead utilities, meaning power and cable and phone. So, and where that would occur and how much that would occur in what area. So really, until that is really decided, and it's going to be hard to detail every expenditure for the remainder of urban renewal.
Any other,
The background, I guess.
yeah, any other comments before we move on?
Well, I've got one comment regarding the, on page 1, the URA general fund. Looks like the director position changes to part-time midway through the fiscal year if we follow the proposal here.
Yes.
And that to some extent is dependent upon the work program that evolves. And I mean, there's enough on the plate now that I'm comfortable that it is a full-time position. It depends on how the project list comes out and how the emphasis are, that the staffing needs can vary depending on that. So some are very intensive staffing, some are not so intensive. But we think that based on what we're hearing so far, that makes sense at this point.
Thank you.
I have some questions about the big line items. If you just briefly go through each one, starting with the one, the $300,000 at the bottom of the second page, the $300,000 for economic development.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, so yeah, that's the big one in the materials and services category, and that again is that will go is added to the $400,000 that's in the loan program. And the reason that there's two different categories there is because in the economic development program that we're putting together, there are loan opportunities, and then there probably are projects or grant opportunities. And so one we would use the loan program for, and one we would use this program for. So we don't have any specific projects identified for that, but that program is going to be brought forth. Just for your information, we've identified about 23 different options of economic development ideas, from business expansion to business retention to recruitment to supporting the programs that are already going on in Lincoln City. And then the agency has not had a chance to look at that list really closely and decide which ones they want to go forward with, all of them or one or two of them, and so we won't know what until that happens. But there's funding there for that, and we get strong indication that the agency wants to move into that area, and that's why in 2009 we modified the plan to allow us to do economic development. Before that, we were really restricted into what we could do that could be classified as economic development.
The $100,000 for sidewalk construction, middle of the next page.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that one forth specifically, because we did get there was some conflicting information that we had to work with, and that was that there wasn't a tremendous amount of support from the worksheets and the stuff and the discussions that we had for earmarking funding for public works to use for sidewalks, crosswalks, and accessibility issues. However, we seem to be getting an awful lot of pressure to address sidewalks, crosswalks, and accessibility issues. So we included it in there because we felt like it was prudent to have funding available to do those things. If we're going to be contracting with someone to identify the things that we need to change, there should be funding in order to make those changes. So it's in there, and then it'll be up to the agency whether or not it gets spent.
So it's not specifically allocated to a specific set of sidewalks so far.
That's correct. That's correct.
Nelscott renovation projects, $150,000.
Yeah, we've identified 4 projects that we can probably begin working on, and those are the improvements to the parking lot on 32nd Street in Nelscott, the design of a brand new parking lot on 35th Street at the south end of the Nelscott Strip, undergrounding, doing some preliminary work with Pacific Power and getting some preliminary cost estimates and undergrounding the area between 32nd Street and 35th Street, and then working with ODOT in coming up with a design that will accommodate the Eagles parking lot when their project...
Let me preface that the 4 that he just mentioned are anticipation of the ODOT GAP project that will go through all the way south to 32nd Avenue and a couple of feet beyond. And so there's going to be changes to the alignment of 32nd, and that necessitates some work in the area. These are tied pretty closely to that ODOT project that is beginning to take shape.
We've got some preliminary information about what it's going to look like now. So we have an idea of what that footprint's going to look like. So we can begin the work that we need to do. And in fact, if we get out ahead of ODOT, then maybe their design can reflect what our desires are for those areas. So those are the 4 projects that we've identified into that.
So you're budgeting for a flexible, fluid situation, sounds like.
And for for preliminary design work. Yep.
Finally, I think I know the answer to the $500,000.
Okay.
Is that the Marview, Anchor Street, and Scott?
No, that would be the land purchase. It's money allocated for land purchase.
Any specific land?
No.
Part of what urban renewal does in many urban renewal districts, and part of what can be a very successful thing, is to look for blighted property or property that's next to city property or agency property that can be acquired and put on into a commercial venture on some basis, whether it's a land lease or whether it's a sale, whether it's conditioned on a certain development being built or whatever. It's a mechanism that urban renewal can use to make something happen.
Thank you.
And the agency has asked us to take a look more closely at a sort of addressing blight in the city, and one of those options is to actually purchase the property and, like the city manager said, and then make things happen with it.
Kurt, if I could I go back to the Nell Scott renovation projects?
Yes.
We've got budgeted 150, and you then, I think, named 4 projects.
Yes.
And I'm getting these off page 3 of the narrative. 32nd parking lot renovations, Eagles Lodge accommodations, 35th new parking lot, and undergrounding 32nd, 35th.
Correct.
In the narrative, that shows a heck of a lot more than 150,000. So I'm
that good.
I'm wondering, and also knowing, as David just put forth, it's tied with ODOT gap. So I'm assuming that this is the 150 is for some just preliminary stuff in anticipation of doing the work, probably in a future fiscal year.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Thank you. That helps. If I could, staying on that page, I had also identified, I was curious, building improvements, 10,000, further up on page 3 of the numbers. And just...
It showed up on your worksheet as contributing to a new sign for the community center. And so that's what that's for.
Oh, okay, so this is...
The community center and the cultural center, we're looking at new signage, and I believe the cultural center, so we reduced that by half because we believe the cultural center got a grant for their new sign.
They did, and as far as the community center, I'll mention that, and you'll also be hearing about this another time when it comes to the VCB budget, because there's also an amount in that for the community center. The Urban Renewal Agency made a very large investment in expansion of the community center, 7 years ago? 7 years ago, to add the gymnasium, the fitness rooms, the expanded locker rooms, et cetera, as not only a quality of life issue for our residents and our future residents, but for visitors also. I don't think you invest in a business of that magnitude of millions of dollars without looking pretty seriously at having a sign that let people know that your business is there. And the difficulty has been that we don't have property for a sign close to the community center on 101. So what we're really probably looking at here is trying to acquire an easement or property for a future sign.
And that's what the $10,000 would be for the property, not the sign itself?
That's correct.
For the property.
Well, again, we don't have property, we don't have a deal in place. There's not too many options, there's a few. I'm not going to tell you that it can be done. We'd like to allocate funds in case we are able to acquire easement or a property for a suitable sign.
If I could, over on page 1 of the numbers, trying to remember is this the revenue lease income? Is that the glass studio? 6,000.
I believe, unless they've listed that they're not being charged currently, I think it includes the Slet's house as well. But we paid off the those are the two that we got out.
Thank you. And then on that same page, then down under first the contract services, I remember in the narrative was talking about ADA contract.
Right. There's always things that kind of crop up during the year, so that's an area that we keep funded, but we increased it a little bit this year because we know that we're going to specifically do some contracting for ADA issues.
Is this for a bigger plan, or is this still, corrective project?
As I understand it, it's sort of in anticipation of a city-wide transition plan of transitioning some of the areas we identify as needing to be upgraded. But because of funding, the Urban Renewal Agency has the funding available to it now, and it'll be running out. So we're looking at the Highway 101, which falls within the Urban Renewal District, and so obviously the Urban Renewal Agency is able to then pay for that contracting.
It's really a couple of parts. The first part, and the part we want to get started on as quickly as we can, is an inventory of the major walking routes for ADA compliance to see what deficiencies that we have. But then, yes, you mentioned a transition plan, which is identifying a broader group of deficiencies and a plan, a time frame, a plan, if you will, a long-term plan to bring those areas that are, I shouldn't say out of compliance, that would not comply with current standards. May have been built 30 years ago, but they don't comply with standards. They're legal, but you're supposed to have a transition plan to say how you're going to eventually bring those into compliance. So, yeah, for the most part, it's a fairly new program in both the Urban Renewal Agency budget and quite a bit of investment also in the city budget in this area.
Do you have anything else?
That's all I had on those pages, yeah.
Should we move on to the reviewing the rules of procedure? And
I've got one more here, Mr. Chair, if I may. On page 2, general fund, 3/4 of the way down the page, we've got maintenance/lease office equipment, 10,000.
The majority of that is for the copy machine in the Urban Renewal Office. The Urban Renewal Agency leases the copy machine, and that's the color copy machine, and the rest of the city uses it.
And that's a $10,000 a year lease?
I'm not sure exactly what the total is, but that's the bulk of it, yes.
Mr. Chair?
yes.
Just above that, a little ways there, is the postage and meter leases. And I'm just curious, how many postage meters do we have in this city?
2 that I can recall.
So in looking in the city budget, I see that that's allocated to each one under the department.
Well, not each department. Major users.
Or most of them, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
There's 2. The VCB has a postage meter, and there's one on the 3rd floor that handles most of the load.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Moving on now to, I guess, item F on the agenda, reviewing the rules of procedure. Is there some copy to read? Sir.
Well, actually, I would think that what it might do is raise some questions here of how, if the committee wanted to do something,
sure,
what the process would be, and our steps forward into approving or recommending approval of budget, that kind of process. But I would think, one of the things we'd do is get comfortable with the numbers. The other would be the continuing pages, which revenues and where the funding has come from, just kind of going through, and then kind of questions, again, any questions about expenses and, where the urban renewal is going, kind of stuff.
Okay.
Or it might be, in the past, we've had two basic procedures. One is where we ask the budget presenter to go through things in detail, and the other one is in which the budget presenter can sort of skim over things, and we would stop when we had a question. And the second is far quicker, but presumes more familiarity with that the committee has more familiarity with the budget.
Well, why don't we do the...
In this case, it's such a small budget, and we've already asked questions.
Yeah. So let's just run through it then.
I think we did.
Yeah.
You wanted to start in the revenue side, or is that what I heard?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I don't know if I need to move, but I move we go on to comments from citizens present, unless someone has any further questions for the presenter.
Okay. We don't need a motion for that, do we? All right. Let's just move on to comments from citizens present then.
See, don't go away too far.
Yeah. Seeing none. Why don't we...
It must be optimistic. Yeah, thanks.
Well, since we don't seem to have any comments from citizens present, let's just move right on to agenda item H, budget review. Welcome back.
Before we get too far, I do need to ask your indulgence here. When you get to approval, I would hope that you do not miss this. It's a fairly important issue. When we presented this budget, well, actually, I'm going to call it a mistake on my part, and that's that we put the funds that were not appropriated into an ending fund balance, meaning it really can't be spent. And that's not how we do it. I mean, unless there is a contingency appropriation, if a major project came up or needed to be accelerated, like an undergrounding or like a land purchase or whatever, that would not give us the opportunity to spend the money. So normally what we do is put the ending fund balance, roll it into capital reserve, and that money is not spent without agency approval, but it gives that opportunity to do so. If it's in ending fund balance, then it's to some extent locked up. And that was not the intention here of the budget.
So is there a procedure that needs to be made to, so I'm hearing you say over on page 9, is that where it shows the total? No, that's
well, it's page 4.
Sorry.
Page 4 of the the last page of the horizontal budget pages.
Right there.
That ending fund balance would be added to the additional capital reserve line item. it becomes a reserve. It means that during the year, the agency could appropriate that, and you can, in the process for doing that, you can change this budget, essentially, from my understanding, all you want. After you approve it and it gets to the agency for adoption, then there's limits on what the agency can do. So they would not have that opportunity if you don't make that change.
So this, what we're saying is this needs to be an action of this committee before we approve the budget to make this.
Or as part of the approval process, yes.
To change, okay.
Thank you.
Because I agree with, I think Dick Ricketts was talking about, we've really kind of gone through or asked the highlight questions of on pages 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm wondering if the rest of the committee has specific questions that, help clarify, as hopefully a lot of this is just allocations based on people and involved in the city. And HR is giving you, some of this training or as I remember, past discussions, they're telling you to put it in the budget.
There are maybe 3 or 4 in materials and services like the mechanic, the GIS, that they provide numbers to put in. And then there are the ones that we just mentioned, the reimbursements to general fund and Lincoln Square, and to the transfer for the percent for arts. So those are figured for me and placed in there.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
is there any particular kind of wording needed for a motion to adopt this budget?
Well, no. It's a simple motion to adopt. Again, I ask that you do keep in mind the issue of appropriating the fund balance.
Do you need that whole $700,000 relocated to the capital reserve, or is it the 1.1? Is that what you need to
My recommendation would be to appropriate the entire ending fund balance of 191,704 added to the capital reserve item. It gets put into a capital reserve, but that way it can be spent.
with approval?
What line are we talking about?
Page 4.
The bold-face line on page 4, total ending fund balance. You'll see that the current budget, the ending fund balance was budgeted as 0. That's what we intended to do with this budget. Okay, and we didn't. We show an ending, it's a working number that I need to see as the budget develops as to how much we expect to roll over the following year with this program. If the program changes, then we have to have the opportunity to fund it. So, like the current budget, I would like this budget to end with a total ending fund balance of 0 with a capital reserve.
I so moved.
Including the amendment to the
Is there a line for the capital?
Yeah.
the capital reserve item?
Right. I move that the $1,191,704 in the ending fund balance, and whatever figures above also need to be moved, be put into additional capital reserve, which is currently at $300,000. I think isn't that what you suggested?
That's exactly what I suggested, yeah.
So that's my motion.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Now I move the budget be adopted.
Okay. Do you have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Discussion?
Yeah, I'm sorry. We're getting into details here. I think that's form over substance, but I'm going to say it anyway. It needs to be approved rather than adopted.
Oh.
Yeah, it needs to be approved or recommended.
What needs to be?
Well, I said adopted, yeah.
Oh,
And by roll call, the motion was to approve the budget, or excuse me, adopt the budget, and it should have been to approve the budget. The Budget Committee approves the budget, the Urban Renewal Agency would adopt it.
I'll be glad to second an approval.
I just misspoke.
okay, great.
It probably wouldn't have made any difference.
And it's by roll call then? Okay.
Anderson,
Yes.
Eggleton, Ellingson,
Yes.
Hoagland,
Yes.
McLean,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Norikis,
Yes.
Quant,
Yes.
Ricketts.
Yes.
Ryan, Sprague,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
and Walke.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Somebody to adjourn.
Okay. Unless there's other comments?
I guess all I would do is, if there's any questions on other pages that, for clarification, that members may have had.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Questions, comments, anything that, any burning desires before we adjourn? Okay. Hearing none, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
If we're still on TV, and I don't know if we are or not, in about 10 minutes exactly, this group will resume as the city's budget committee.
I have some remarks.
On record.
Call to order the Budget Committee for the City of Lincoln City, April 30th, 2012. Thank you all for joining us. Roll call, please.
Dick Anderson.
Here.
Gordon Eggleton. Gary Ellingson.
Here.
Dennis Hoagland.
Here.
Gordon McLean.
Here.
Lenny Nelson.
Here.
Chester Norikis. Henry Quant.
Here.
Dick Ricketts.
Here.
Sue Ryan.
Here.
Roger Sprague.
Here.
James Taylor is excused. Alex Ward.
Here.
And Susan Mulkey.
Here.
Great. Let me remind everybody with questions and comments, just get the mics, if you would, up to you or lean over to speak into the mic so the public audience can hear us. Again, before I call for the next order agenda item, I do really want to thank all of you for your willingness to participate in the committee. You raised your hand for whatever reason and went through an interview process and even subjected yourself to background checks, and I appreciate that. And what I would hope, again, is through this process tonight and future, that you'll be a lot better educated and aware of how the city's dollars really are expended, as well as where the revenues come from. One of the things that I've recognized as mayor is probably the number one or questions that come to me are around the budget and how we spend money, and why don't we spend it differently. And I would hope that after this experience that you would be able to answer those questions and take the burden off me, quite frankly. So this is, I'm trying to get more educated and informed citizens out in the street. So again, I'm hoping you'll ask questions. It's not something that you grasp necessarily overnight. You're on for year terms, and so we'll be building education tonight and into the future. With that, the next item is election of a chair for the City Budget Committee. Entertain the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I nominate Chester Norikis for chairman of the Budget Committee for the City of Lincoln City.
I'll second that.
All right. Is there any other nominations?
I move they close.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of closing the nominations, say aye.
Aye.
And we have a motion on the table for Chester Norikis to be the chair of the City of Lincoln City Budget Committee. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
You have it, Mr. Norikis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We need a vice chair, it seems, and do we have any recommendations from the committee for a vice chair? Or nominations, pardon me. Hearing none, I'll nominate Mr. Dick Ricketts.
There you go.
I second it.
Are there any more nominations on the floor?
Move to close the nominations.
Second that.
The nominations are closed. All those in favor of Mr. Ricketts as vice chair? Say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, Mr. Ricketts, you are appointed. Yay. Item E on the agenda, review rules of procedure. I have a sheet here labeled Budget Committee Handbook, and in the handbook there's a listing of duties and responsibilities I'd like to convey. The Budget Committee must receive the budget message from the budget officer, the city manager, review the proposed budget, hear public questions and comments, approve the budget for council adoption, and approve the property tax amount or rate of property taxation. As provided in state law, the Budget Committee may receive the budget document before the first meeting reviewing the proposed budget. The document must also be made available to the public at the same time. Once the budget document has been made public, only the Budget Committee and/or the governing body can make changes. The Budget Committee may request any information it requires for review of the budget document from the staff. Generally, these requests are directed to the city manager or department head. The Budget Committee does not approve new personnel, employment contracts, or salary schedules. However, these items are part of the proposed budget and have a fiscal impact. While the Budget Committee cannot negotiate contracts, it can adjust the dollar amount in the proposed budget that is available for these expenses. These adjustments would affect staffing or service levels. The Budget Committee can also review capital expenditures and make adjustments to them. I'm hoping to, in terms of procedure, I'm hoping to go through the budget message this evening with the city manager and cover items 1 and 2 under item I on the agenda, item 1 and 2 being general fund summary and general fund resources. And if we accomplish that this evening, let's look at where we are and how we feel, and see if we want to continue on to city council administration, etc. Please, if you have recommendations in terms of altering expenditures, please hold those until our last meeting. I am anticipating we'll have 3 meetings, since this is quite a document. Please make notes of your questions and whatever alterations you want to consider, and we'll consider it after we've seen the entire budget. With no objections, we will proceed. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Hawker, if you please.
Thank you. I'm going to take a few minutes and give you the highlights of the highlights. And by that I mean the budget message itself, which is online and in your budget books. For the benefit of the public, it's 29 pages long, and it highlights the major issues. Obviously, I'm not going to go through 29 pages tonight. I'm going to go through a few things mostly for the benefit of the public, because, again, you've had an opportunity to review those, but also maybe to just frame the whole issue is in the broadest brush strokes possible, not in 29 pages, but in a couple of paragraphs here, or a couple of minutes. We have 40-plus funds. I haven't actually counted them up. I know there's about 40 or 45 funds. Some are very small, some are quite large. They're all separate accounting units. Almost each one has a specific purpose, and the revenues that each one of those funds get is restricted to that purpose. The notable exception to that is the general fund, which can be used for any governmental purpose. The other funds have a specific purpose, and the revenues are dedicated either by law or by resolution, and in some cases by practice, but in most cases by law or resolution or ordinance, to a specific fund, and they can't be used for other purposes. That's one of the things that I think that is most misunderstood in the public's perception is, why do you spend money on advertising for visitors when my sidewalk needs repaired or my street needs repaired? And the reason in that particular case is because by state law and by local law, meaning the vote of the people, the lodging tax was designated for very specific purposes, and we don't have a choice to change that. So we can't put it into that. So again, if it's a water rate revenue, we can't use that for streets and so on. So that's the most important thing, I think, for the public's benefit. The major funds, besides the general fund, the major operating funds are parks, streets, water, sewer, Visitor and Convention Bureau, and dispatch. We also have a major fund in bond payments. Most of the other funds are fairly small. Overall, in combination, if you put all the revenues from all the funds together, 25% of our total city revenue is property tax, comes from property tax. 29% comes from water and sewer rates, 21% from lodging, 5% from franchise fees, meaning on a 5% fee on electricity, on natural gas, on cable and telephone. 3% comes from the state in the form of our portion of cigarette tax, gasoline tax, etc. 2% is federal grants, and 13% make up all the other mostly minor revenue sources. Excuse me. The only major revenue increase that's in the proposed budget is a 5% increase in water rates and a 4% in sewer, and we'll get to those as we get into those funds. Overall, in combination, the expenditures are 33% personnel, 20% materials and services, 16% capital, 13% debt service, and 20% fund balance and reserves. That's a big number. Personnel is always an issue because it's a manageable ongoing expense. Overall, we've added one full-time position to the budget, and that's in the water treatment plant. Our total count of full-time equivalent positions, and that's when you add up all the full-time and part-time positions, will go up 1.5 full-time equivalent. Our contract with ASME, who is the union that represents about 48% of our employees, will be up at the end of this current year, at the end of June. And contract negotiations will begin in earnest very soon. I do not expect major changes. Certainly there'll be issues and certainly there'll be expenditures, but I don't expect major budgetary impacts that were not anticipated. Medical insurance rates are on the rise and have been on the rise for some time. And when this budget was prepared, we did not have a rate. We now have received rates since then. but there's a multitude of different rates that affect different employees in different ways, and there's some choices to be made as to how long we want to lock those rates in. And so I can't tell you exactly whether it complies with our budget, but it's going to be real close to budget. It could be a couple of tenths or a % either way. The general fund, which usually gets a lot of attention, again, because if nothing else, it can be used for any governmental purpose. Expenditures that are proposed increase over the current budget by 1.3%. The current budget in the general fund calls for the use of surplus by $387,000. That was by design and part of a long-term financial plan. We expect, however, to use only $178,000 instead of $387,000 of our surplus. We expect to end the current budget year with $3,174,000, and next year with $2,807,000. That's part of a plan that we've had for some time to build surplus. We knew that over time our expenses would exceed our revenues. Some of our revenues are fixed. A lot of them are constrained, and overall are below the rise in expenses to keep the service levels the same. But knowing that urban renewal would sunset in 2014-15, we knew if we could manage our finances until then, we would receive about an additional $950,000 a year. That's not an additional tax, that's a redirection of tax to the general fund. So the budget plan has been build surplus, use some of that surplus to get us to the urban renewal sunset. For 9 of the last 11 years, we've added to that surplus so that we could maintain service levels. In 12 of the last years, we finished better than the budget, and we are doing that again this year. The largest reason why we finish under budget, or there's a number of reasons. One is we tend to budget a little bit conservatively, both in revenues and expenses. The largest other factor is that we get personnel vacancies that we don't fill right away, either by design or just because it takes a while to fill a position vacancy. We can't anticipate those as to which division they're going to be in, whether it's going to be in police or whether it's going to be in some other area. And so when it occurs, it causes a budget underrun. There are a few things that we don't complete in a year that cause us to run under budget. This year we'll have, for example, part of the VRD consultant that we're using will run into next year. But for the most part, in the general fund, we finish what we have allocated. There's a few exceptions. But in the capital funds, when you get to the capital funds, often we don't complete the project and didn't really expect to, but appropriated enough money so that if the project goes faster than expected, we have the money there. The one thing that wasn't in your budget book, and it was not online, is the 5-year projection for the general fund. The reason for that is because we don't do that projection until we complete the proposal to you, so that the two are consistent. So I'm going to pass that out now and just spend a minute or two. It's not part of the budget, but it gives you a snapshot into what I was talking about, this financial plan. Kathy? The other major operating funds have the long-range projection, the 5-year projection in your appendix. And again, I don't expect you to digest this today. I want to take you to the actual bottom line after you get it. Okay, if you'll turn it over, you can, again, take this along with you and read it over later before our next meeting. You'll see the ending fund balance from the fiscal year 2009-10 through 2016-17. And you will see that we had about a $3.2 million fund balance, then 3.3, and then if you skip over to the current year estimate of 3.174, the proposed budget 2.807, and then we would go down further next year, or 2 years, to 2.256, and then 2.378, and so on, with an ending balance of $2 million after 5 years. That does not assume an annexation of Rhodes End, and I've already been asked about whether that should be included or not. There's two reasons that we have not. One is we don't know when. Number one, we don't know if it will occur. It's a decision that has to be made by the City Council. And number two, we don't know when that would be. And three, we don't know if any of the property tax would be ramped in or if it would all come in at the same time. So that is on the horizon, and that is a potential major net revenue gain of approximately $600,000 a year, which is about half the property tax that we would get. The rest would be spent on services and to offset the decline in water rates. So again, we're managing to a plan to stay solvent. Every city, I believe, in Oregon, or almost every city in Oregon, is looking at declining revenues as not declining revenues, revenues that don't keep pace with the increase in costs of energy, of personnel, of construction, etc. And we've been able to manage around that, and should be able to continue to do so at least through this 5-year budget projection. Beyond that, it really gets tough to say what's going to happen. What's going to happen in our tax laws, what's going to happen to our revenue sources. We've had a number of revenue sources that have not increased in many years. At some point, the City Council and possibly the voters may want to look at that. Or at some point, we would have to consider reducing some services. On the other major funds, major operating funds, long-term, the street revenues will not be sufficient to maintain condition. They are currently more or less able to do that, but long-term they will not unless there's another revenue source. And again, for example, with a major annexation, we would have surplus for a number of years that could be put into any one of a number of different things. In the water fund, for 2 years, we're going to be tight because of the expenditures we've had on Schooner Creek, Maine, the loss of our transmission main on Schooner Creek, and us putting in a redundant system. We spent almost $1 million, or it's about $900,000 that we had not anticipated spending at that time. After 2 years, water fund begins rapid recovery. Bond issues are paid off, etc. And so we'll be in real good shape water fund wise. The sewer fund, I believe, is in pretty good shape. We've had huge investments in infrastructure. The sewer plant, many $million-dollar lift station have been totally rebuilt. And what we don't know is the condition of some of our sewer mains and a lot of the laterals that connect between the sewer main and the house. That is the property owner's responsibility, but can contribute greatly to the challenges we face at the sewer plant. So we have some uncertainty in the sewer plant. We'll begin to nail that down more and more as more of our lines get TV'd. We have excellent equipment to do that, and as they get more of the mains TV'd, we'll know how many need to be replaced or how many are leaking badly. The VCB, major fund funded by the lodging tax through our visitors. It's in a state of evolution right now, I should say, because the council and the VCC, the Visitor and Convention Committee, are taking a hard look at how that money should be spent, and it's beginning to evolve, and the budget's a little loose because of that, like you heard with urban renewal. It's one of the two areas that's being looked at very carefully to say, how can we best spend our money? The Parks Fund is okay for now. Partly that's because we did not replace the Parks and Recreation Director and put those duties elsewhere at some sacrifice in planning in certain areas. But it's made that and also converting a full-time position to part-time, multiple part-times, has saved us some money. But we're still long-term going to face a challenge in parks, and we need to be extremely careful about adding new maintenance responsibilities, and we also have to reduce maintenance demand where we can. No new debt is proposed. I think that's significant. This November, we will pay off $3 million bond issue for open space. And that's I think, about a year early. Ron Tierney's in the back row somewhere there, and he'll either shake his head this way or this way, but I think it's about a year early. Next September, we'll pay off a $2 million bond for the water reservoir. So our debt, we're not proposing new debt, and our debt is being paid off. The budget online and in the paper budget has the 5-year projections for all those major operating funds, water, sewer, streets, parks, general fund. Give you an idea where we're headed on all those if we stay on the current course. I think that's about it. I'm very pleased to present you with what I believe is a financially sound budget, one which maintains services and continues a major investment in infrastructure and decreasing debt. And that's the highlight of the highlights.
Thank you, Mr. Hawker.
Mr. Chairman, just maybe a clarification. David, on the 5-year projection plan, would it be fair to say on the ending balance that, in fact, we're looking to utilize $1.2 million of that amount for cash flow? I mean, so it's one thing to say, yes, it is a reserve or an ending balance, but in fact, it's...
we don't have to do that, and a lot of cities don't. We choose to say, of that surplus, whatever number you see on the bottom line, we believe that 1.2 of that really is for cash flow. We could do what a lot of other cities do, and that's borrow that money from other funds, or even some have borrowed from outside. But we think it's fiscally prudent to always keep $1.2 million, a minimum $1.2 million at any one time to cover the fact that cash comes in at a different time than it goes out.
Thank you.
Really good point.
Looking at that same fund balance, Mr. Hawker, does this anticipate the sunsetting of urban renewal?
It does. It does.
Thank you.
If you look on the first page,
I see it.
Yeah, I've just everybody got the first page.
Third line down.
Yeah, it's urban renewal sunset property taxes kicks in 2014-15.
Yes.
And goes through the 3 years that remain.
Thank you. Well, if it's agreeable with the committee, I'd like to start on page 1 of the budget message and entertain questions and discussion regarding each highlighted issue here.
Actually, the overview was very helpful, and certainly reading through the narrative helped, but I had some margin notes and maybe section by section. But David, would you mind just kind of helping us, could you kind of your closing sentence under the initial start, this budget does not contain any major surprises, with possible exception that the general fund will be a better financial condition than previously anticipated. And I just underline that And that's because we have more balance than we had
Current year.
anticipated?
Current year budget, yeah.
Okay.
And the last year budget projection, every year it seems like we can slide this. For the last 5 years, I think, I could be wrong on, it could be 4 or 5 years, but every one of the last 4 or 5 years, we've slid 1 year better than expected in the projections. And, you know, I'm not going to guarantee that's going to happen again. But we're getting so close to the urban renewal sunset that at this point it almost doesn't matter if we want to stay solvent and keep the service levels up. Even if we come in right on budget, we're still on track to make it easily to the urban renewal sunset.
Thank you. I think it's just for background, it helps. The other, and then moving down in the next section, that, and I found it interesting, the increase in expenditures of 1.2, and pointing out that that's a calculation from a budget, current budget, to proposed budget.
Right. And I'm not sure, by the way, there are a couple of mistakes here. There's 2 different places where I've said that. In one place I said 1.3, in one place I said 1.2. I think it actually is 1.3.
I'd round anyways. But I guess what my note was, for the fun of it, because I was curious, against the actual or the estimated close, and so in fact that'll be a 5.3 increase. Yeah. But to put in perspective, so I just want to make sure I was.
Yep, apples to apples, it's 1.3. If, in fact, we would spend all the money and get just exactly the revenue and not come in under budget next year, then that would be correct, yes.
And then, I guess and I apologize for my ignorance, just going down to the third in that same budget highlights. Citywide, we expect to end with about $6.8 million in fund balances, reserves, and contingencies. Now, that's not, obviously not just the general fund,
right,
but that's the entire...
Everything. All funds, not including urban renewal, of course. That's separate government.
Because this number doesn't come up anywhere.
Ever.
Right.
I think it's the first time I've added it up.
That's why I wanted to know where that fund was. I was trying to... It's
everywhere. I went through every fund that we had and took the ending balance and the contingencies, and if there were reserves, I've added all those up, and it's $6.8 million, roughly. It was a few more dollars and cents, but...
Okay. That's all I had on that.
And I thought that was significant, because in a case of an absolute disaster, I mean a catastrophe, of course there's outside resources available to you, but the first thing that you need to know is what are our resources available to us. In an emergency, all resources, appropriated or not appropriated, become available.
And is that 15% figure a commendable figure compared to other municipal organizations?
It certainly is the ones that I've looked at, and increasingly in recent years. They're. I mean, I honestly, I'm just going to say this. I believe we're in an enviable financial position compared to most small cities and compared to most cities in Oregon. I doubt if you'll find many that have that level of contingency and reserves.
Thank you. Any more questions on this first page from anybody? Hearing none. How about regarding the budget perspective? Page 1 and 2.
I like the graph as far as the visual, trying to picture where the revenue comes from. That's helpful on 2. And
yeah, what surprised me when I did it that way was when you look at water and sewer combined, you know, we spend an awful lot of time on the general fund, but look at what water and sewer, I mean, it's 29% of our total in all funds. We run 2 big businesses, and they're water and sewer.
Not to, I guess, digress, but again, you talked about potential increases in both those funds this year. And again, part of our philosophy, present and past, has been to keep those kind of standalone businesses. Is that?
It has been. The exception is the sewer fund has a property tax. That was, when we saw that it was going to cost $20 million to build a new sewer plant, and that I'm going to go into that a little bit more because I think it's important. The old sewer plant was built largely with federal dollars. When the Clean Water Act came along, the federal government gave an awful lot of money out to cities to build a sewer plant. And the rates were never set to replace it. And we went for years and years and years and didn't accumulate money to replace that plant. So now the plant's out of compliance. It was. No, I shouldn't say now. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it became out of compliance and at capacity, and we had to replace it. And the cost of that was so enormous that the council at that time decided, let's have a property tax for a portion of that cost. Let's have system development charges that we get from new development allocated largely to that, and the rates. And at that time it was projected that we would have 5 consecutive years of 10% increases in sewer rates. I think we've not had 5 years of 10%, but we've had a few years of 4 or 5%. So except for the property tax, yes, the two are self-sustaining by the rates.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
neither of the graphs on pages 2 or 3 indicate how big the city is financially. And if I'm correct, the city is a $39 million, almost $40 million operation in total.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something the public might want to keep in mind.
Yeah, it depends how you count your money.
I'm counting all expenditures, all revenues.
The difficulty is that we transfer money between funds, and that's double counting to some extent. The actual expenditure, if you'd add them up on page 3 in that graph, if you'd add up those numbers, and I don't know what that adds up to.
I added them up. It's $35,147,525.
So that takes out the transfers.
That takes out transfers?
Yeah. So because transfers are just from one to the other. So if you count it as a transfer as an expenditure, and then you count it when you spend it, you've counted it twice.
And on a page further on in the budget, I saw a total of $39 million. So I'm presuming we got around $4 million in transfers. Is that correct?
Makes sense to
So
me.
it's about $35 million that the city spends each year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Still a big number.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I know in years past it would depend on if we got money in from a bond measure or something also.
Right.
You know, that can kind of make it seem like, well, you do have a lot of money, but you have more money than you do because it just happens.
And we're still spending some bond money. I mean, in the sewer fund, we're still spending bond money that the bonds have been sold, and we're spending that money to finish the plant.
So add that in or subtract that.
Another comment on page 3.
Mm-hmm.
The debt service is over $4 million. So I think that's paying off bonds.
Right.
So in general, sometime or another, it would be nice if somehow or another the city can fund things without going to the bond market. I think sometimes you have to.
Well, it's always a choice. We certainly would have never had a sewer plant replacement without bonds. I mean, it would have taken 20 years of higher rates that people had the wisdom to set aside that money to replace. But keep in mind that the plant also builds capacity for the future, which is why SDCs are in there. And so if you want to rely on future SDCs, meaning developers help pay for that added capacity, the only way to do that is by bonds.
Any more questions on page 2 and 3?
I would like to note on page 3, and it is a major change in the accounting and formatting, in that we've proposed incorporating the police department, the police department into the general fund. And that makes some of the history look a little bit weird when you look at the general fund summary. But it really, truly belongs in the general fund, and the auditors in the audit, one of the audit statements that they did included it in the general fund. It should be. We've kept dispatch out separate as a separate fund because we have 911 tax revenues that the state says you have to keep separate. So,
got a kind of off-the-wall question. When I look at material like this, I'm always recognizing there are fixed expenses or contracted wages or whatever. And then there's flexibility in some part of the budget. I'm just wondering, off the top, is it 80% fixed budget and we have 20% flexibility budget, or do you have any idea what that would be?
well, it's a lot of
Use budget discretionary income funding for?
Well, you'd have to preface that by saying with or without service cuts, okay? Because the amount that's actually fixed, meaning debt service, meaning street lights that you have long-term contract on with Pacific Power, street lights will go on, okay? And assuming you still want to heat the building and whatever. But you still have a huge amount of your revenues that go to personnel costs that deliver service. And is that flexible or not? Okay, sure it is. So you're going to have to be a little more specific of how you want me to answer that.
Well, with the personnel, for example, you have contract costs, and you can pretty well predict what your wages and salaries and benefits and those are. So they're kind of fixed, but we don't need to get into it too deep.
Okay.
80-20.
Okay, I'll answer it. I don't mean to beg off. In the general fund, police will be under contract. ASME will presumably under contract at something that won't cause a great surprise, I believe. So assuming staff levels don't change, I would say that 90% of the general fund is fixed, and maybe even higher. When you get to the other funds, that's not quite so true. The general fund is by and large, without reducing services, without trimming staff, you're in the 90s.
I'm just reminding us that we made some accounting changes last year where we've spread some costs, GIS and IT, through different, but now we've at least got a couple of years of history, so that shouldn't jump out, correct? And didn't appear to be.
Yes.
Without objection, let's move on to page 4, personnel. And any questions that
Mr. Chairman?
any of the members may have. Yes, ma'am.
About the middle of the page, or almost to the, like the fourth paragraph or so, it talks about PERS, and then it suggests that employees are tier 1, 2, or 3, and I didn't know what that meant.
Good question. Depending on when employee was hired, and I don't have the dates at my fingertips, but the long-term employees that have been here longer than I have, I've been here 12 years, I'm tier 2. It has a defined set of benefits, and there's a tier 1 that came before that was a little more expensive than tier 2. And then there's the tier 3, which is less expensive yet. And beyond that, I'm not equipped to answer that, but we can get somebody who is. But as time goes by, and more employees, fewer employees are Tier 1, fewer employees are Tier 2, and more are Tier 3, it's a cost containment that the state legislature did. And it will make a difference over time.
In that same paragraph, I think for the benefit of the public, I'd like to read one sentence. The average net increase to the city was about 50%.
That was in the current budget year.
Yes.
Yeah. And
significant increase.
yeah, the retirement cost that we pay increased 50% in the current budget year, and we expect some increase again, not in the proposed budget, but in the following year, and there is an estimate in the long-range projection, but we don't know yet what that'll be. That depends on the state, on PERS, how the market has done, stock market, for example, the actuarial studies that they do, and actions that the state legislature might take. So we don't know what that increase will be. And next year, when that budget message is presented, it'll spell that out. But right now, we don't know.
Mr. Chair?
Pardon me, Mr. Sprague, if I may, regarding medical insurance in that same sort of cost category for the city, we're estimating a 7% increase in medical insurance and a workers' comp insurance, anticipating an increase of 17%.
Yes. But the big one is the medical, dental, vision insurance that we pay, and we estimated 7%. I think our insurance carrier, said something like 9% or whatever, and they've usually been a little high on their early estimates, so we backed that down to 7%. We got our rates either Friday or today, I don't remember what, and they're still trying to analyze what that's going to mean. Now, this year, apparently, we've got a choice. We can lock in for different periods of time, from, I'm going to say, 6 months to 17 months. Okay, say that again, and I'll repeat it. Even I didn't understand that.
We get some choices anyway.
Yeah, we get some choices. How long you want to lock in? If you want to take the lowest possible rate, that's the shortest time. Is that right, Heather? Debbie? It's an important issue. It's a huge issue.
The cost of medical.
And this is news to me, so that's why I'm not conversant in it.
This is a one-time change. The medical's been a bit strange because we've kind of operated on 2 different years. Our rates change in August, but the deductible is a calendar year. And so you might be going January through July with a $300 deductible, then August it goes to $400, and then the next year, So CIS has changed just to match up those 2 years so that they'll be calendar year based. So this is a transition year. So we have 2 options from August to December. We can either do that separately, or we can roll the August and December into the next calendar year.
So what do you want to do, David?
I have no idea.
They'll give us the August to December rate, and they'll give us the 17-month rate, but they'll only give us an estimate on the calendar year. So it's what do you think is going to happen to the rates, basically?
This is where HR and finance earn their money in figuring this one out.
Mr. Hoffer, does the national health care law, the possibility of some or all of it being repealed or its continued existence, have a part to play in these expenses?
Certainly, but I have yet been able to read anything definitive either way on that issue. I get different expert opinions on what that's going to do, up or down, and have you seen anything that?
I haven't heard anything lately. Part of the problem is it, it keeps changing, too. They pass one thing and then change it again, and so...
And what's funded and what isn't funded? I mean, the law is one thing, the funding is another thing, and so, it's... Stay tuned.
Is one of... Oh, excuse me.
Mr. Sprague.
Mr. Hocker, the press and everybody else was talking some time back, not too far back, about the viability of PERS. And I'm wondering if you have any ideas to where they are now, whether they are viable and can continue to provide the funds that they're contracted for to their retirees.
Well, they certainly can for a reasonable period of time. And long term, we know that some of the changes that have been made will make a difference. There's still a few things out there on rates that are of concern, meaning the guaranteed rates. There's also some actuarial inequities compared to the private sector that probably need to be fixed. I'd say that my best opinion on that is a few more changes need to occur to keep the long-term viability without having the rates that the cities pay, that the school districts pay, et cetera, get too high. I mean, they're really high now, and I think to load much more on will result in service cuts. So I do think there needs to be some more, if nothing else, I'll call it tweaking, that won't have huge impacts on retirees, but can have a few $1 billion difference.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
David, going back to the medical insurance, and I know that can be a significant expense to the city along with PERS, but the earlier discussion on the changing or increasing deductible, excuse me, has impact, so this is the question, because the higher the deductible, the lower the premium, right. And so that would mean not only for the employee, but also for the city's contribution cost as well.
Yes.
Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And certainly we're moving, and there's some options ahead for us to contain medical costs, and we're following kind of closely what the county's doing right now, in a very high, extremely high deductible, where the money that's saved is put into an account for the employee that can be spent over their lifetime. It's a new way, and it can result in what happens is the employee has greater motivation not to use excess medical, to use the services in excess, in order to have a savings for the long term. How that translates to a savings for the employer, I have yet to see, and the county's going through that right now with their non-represented. I believe the city of Newport is talking seriously about doing that for some of their employees. We're going to be watching that pretty closely, and of course we currently have a plan with employees that allow them to have a choice of between two different deductibles, and there's some savings there that more employees have signed up for the higher deductible than we expected. So there's some management. I mean, we're spending some time here and some effort to try to manage this better for the future, and I think we can contain costs to some extent that way. But medical costs in the United States are just a huge number, and so we're not immune from that.
And I would think that's the message that I'd want people to hear, is when we look at personnel costs, and a great deal of that is not just a wage, it's right. All the benefit that goes along with it. Yeah. If I can, and I don't want to run over, but a short paragraph above, you indicated that roughly 24% of the employees are not associated with acne or police or something, and some of the department heads and yourself passed on cost of living, so it's a compliment, and I don't want to be over that to be shaded over. I'm assuming it was by choice.
Well, it was by my choice.
You as your own individual choice, or okay. Well, I would like to thank those who participated. I think that shows a part of the esprit de corps, and I didn't want to let it just slide.
I would say it was my choice, but I also did not get pushback. Everybody understood that we are in very difficult times for our community because we are a low-income community in a deep recession. And I guess we all felt like it's the least we can do. So,
thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, thank you very much. I think that's very commendable. Yes, sir.
I would hope then that future city councils and budget committees remember this when the economy improves.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
The last paragraph there says unemployment is a significant personnel expense, and that's, what, $11.5 million. And it says that seasonal employees are also eligible for the unemployment, which we pay for itself. It's not from outside. Is that in any way, how is that dealt with? That how long do they have? How do we know that?
Boy, it's really complicated. First of all, unemployment is split on some basis on the recent employers. So that if there's multiple employers, like we hire somebody who was then out of work from another company that had unemployment, then we pay a portion and the other company pays a portion. And currently, if I'm not mistaken, because of federal and state law, the unemployment benefits run for, I believe, 52 weeks. I think that's currently. And now, Oregon, because of its unemployment rate, I think is going down, or is expected to go down to 26 weeks, or may go down to 26 weeks. The two factors at work here. One is the length of time went up during the recession, where it used to be 26 weeks and now it's a lot longer. And two is that people that were seasonal maybe didn't walk into another job when they left us and left us hanging with the unemployment. So in the last couple of years, this recession caught us in unemployment more than it sure had in previous years. And we're certainly hoping that that's going to come down. But we've budgeted quite a bit of money for unemployment. And it also affects our decision a little bit on seasonals.
Hiring seasonal?
Well, yeah, I mean, at some point it could be a given that, say, when the work is seasonal, make your workforce seasonal, okay? But and that balance may have been like this, but with the recession, with the unemployment costs and so on, where that is not quite the same as it used to be. It still may be a real big advantage, but not where it used to be.
Right.
So now we have done that in parks. We've switched one full-time to seasonals. Parks is probably the most, although I had thought for a long time that, geez, they don't do anything in the winter, so why have them? Well, that's not true. I've learned that they have actually quite a workload in the winter, but not as much as the summer. So that would be, to me, an area that you really want to have some seasonals, but you have to be careful there because, again, of the unemployment.
If I may, if they're seasonal and they're not in work, we're still paying their unemployment benefits when they're not working until it's time for them to work again? So we're paying them the entire year?
I'm not. In many cases, yes. I just heard from staff.
Wow.
So, yeah, it has opened our eyes pretty seriously.
And the percentage of their their pay, what percentage is their unemployment benefits?
Well, there's a cap. It's some percentage, and I don't think anybody's going to get rich on it, but, it's a factor for us. Now, that said also is that we pay unemployment. We don't pay unemployment insurance. We pay unemployment.
Right.
The alternative may be, and we'll look at this, would be better off paying insurance at a fixed amount and let somebody else take the risk? Probably not, but we'll keep our eyes on that.
Right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
When you say that we pay that we're self-insured essentially on unemployment, do we follow the guidelines of that the state uses?
Well, not only do we follow them, they tell us how much we're paying.
Okay, so it is regulated then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So somebody leaves our employment and can get unemployment. We terminate a seasonal, for example, okay, because the job's done. They apply for unemployment. If we feel that it was not justified, we can appeal that.
Okay.
They make a determination, and they tell us how much. We haven't talked about this in the past. It's been insignificant in the past.
I just thought there were conditions on the unemployment benefits, not towards seasonal employment. If it's a known seasonal employment, how would the unemployment benefits benefit that person?
I'm hearing that they do. Yes. I'm not. I never thought much in terms of unemployment in the budget process because it never was a major factor. And I think we probably have by type on page. Debbie, help. Debbie, you need to come up here. Don't we have a budget by type in here?
Yeah, but we don't have it broken out by code.
Oh, sorry. We'll get you a number on that, just so you know what we're spending.
Good. It said it's a significant portion of 11.5 million. I mean, it's significant.
Thank you for that.
Boy.
More questions regarding personnel?
Over on page 5, I guess I appreciate this history, and looking at the regular and seasonal employees and then continuing down to the block graph of 5-year average. Chuck, what I didn't understand was, you make the kind of concluding statement of level of capital investment has been exemplary. I didn't know why, though, because I'm assuming 30% is either good or bad, and I don't know of either, compared to other cities.
Yeah.
So does 30% in this figure mean we put a lot of money into capital, or is that should be a low number?
I think it's a good thing that almost a third of your resources go into infrastructure.
So that's a good number to have.
I think it is. I took that as a positive.
Because I've never looked at other cities. These things all help me look for comparisons, so I just didn't know how to translate your word. The other things are kind of normal city, with personnel costs and materials and that kind of stuff. Are those? I'd say
that as a percentage of budget, and the number that I've looked at, and just trying to go back in my head, I would say that personnel services often hover around 50%. Debt service varies greatly, city by city, up or down.
Given that for a number of years we invested very little in infrastructure, I appreciate the fact that we've put 30% of our expenditures into it.
Yeah, the downside is that we've had some pretty significant rate increases in water and sewer over the years. But last year I looked at this pretty carefully, and we were just right at about the state average for water and sewer rates. And whether we're creeping up a little bit past that or not, I don't know. I don't have a current one of those. So, but we did go in water and sewer for many, many, many years, almost 10 years, without a rate increase. And to be honest with you, I think we're paying for it now. We're paying for it in lift station replacements, in water main, in sewer mains, in the sewer plant, in service connections. We're finding our water service connections all over town were either put in a very cheap manner, or over the years were repaired with very cheap parts. And we're seeing a lot of water loss and a lot of repairs because of that.
And a lot of I&I because of the poor sewer laterals?
I think that's more a function of the technology of the day. Okay, the clay pipe or cement pipe before PVC was commonly used for sewer line connections from houses. I think that's a function of the technology that was available at the time.
Okay. Well, I'd like to point out at the top of 5 the fact that we're shrinking government. 2010-11, we had 140.99, let's call it 141 FTEs, and currently we're down to 133.8. I commend the city manager for that as well. More questions on personnel?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah. On this graph that you have, this box graph that you have in the middle of the page, I looked at all the percentages that you had, which were, I think, was an average of some number of years, last 5. Okay, and then I looked at the proposed one that you had over on the preceding page, and every percentage went down. And since these percentages are proportional, why did they all go down? What went up? Well, like, for instance, personnel services over the past 5 years, according to your box graph, is 41%.
Right.
This year, you're in the proposed budget, it's 32.8 as a percentage. That's what it says.
Well, I think a lot of that is a function of how much capital you're spending.
Well, yeah, but my point when I was reading through this, I thought, okay, personnel has gone down. Materials and supplies has gone down from 22 to 19. Capital has gone down from 30 to 15. Now, these are all percentages. Debt services stayed exactly the same. So the two numbers don't add up to 100% anymore. What I don't understand is what went up in the proposed one that took up all the stuff that went down.
Mr. Chair, it might be that the numbers for each year are different. So when we look at these percentages, when we take an average, some of the numbers are more than others, so it won't add up to 100%. This just gives you a rough estimate as to the proportions over 5 years.
But, Mr. Rickett, I understand what you're saying. What I'm pointing out down is they all went down, so what went up?
I think I'm going to have to check my numbers and get back to you.
Okay. Thank you.
I think that's fair.
Because I was waiting to find out what went up. And there wasn't anything.
Yeah, one of the answers, and I'm not sure that's the whole answer, contingencies and fund balance are in one and not in the other. Okay.
Okay.
I'd like to follow up on your point, because you're complimenting Dave on the FTE report here. It is remarkable. To take that one step further, I know that when you reduce an FTE, you quite often redistribute that work among the workforce that is there, the managers and the employees that are adjusting and doing cross-training and showing flexibility or whatever it takes to make that number happen. So it's a team effort there, and with good leadership, but I want to recognize that I know how it goes right down through the organization, and quite often the organization really gets a feeling of pride out of that too. So it's a win-win.
Well, part of that, too, is we work hard at efficiency as far as technology is concerned, as far as equipment. I mean, we have invested a lot in technology and equipment, and I'm not talking about just computers. I'm talking about street sweepers. I'm talking about TV trucks and things that are fairly high technology and to make our jobs more efficient. And that's the way of the world. You have to do it.
Shall we move on? Moving on, general fund overview.
Chair, I've got to confess, I don't understand the chart.
Okay.
Because when I was looking at the shaded, I understand the lighter shaded green is the budget and the darker is the actual.
Well, the actual is the combination of both. It's the total. It's the top of the line. So, for example, the current budget estimate, 11-12, you'll see that the light green goes up 85% of the way up the graph, and that's what the budget is. But how we expect to finish is the top of the line, which is over $3 million.
So that's the surplus then?
Oh,
no.
I'm sorry. Yeah, because here again, we're looking at the ending balance.
Ending balance.
And I'm thinking expenses. I apologize.
Right, okay.
That's the difference. So yeah.
And everything over about $1 million or $1.2 million is surplus. Everything under that is, as far as I'm concerned, not surplus. Cash flow.
Gotcha. I apologize. I was looking at
no problem.
All wrong.
So the dark green just simply means we beat the budget by that amount.
And we've done that 9 years out of 11.
Yeah. So we beat the budget every year. What 9 years out of 11 we spent less than we took in.
Well, that's extraordinary.
Yeah, I think there's a culture in the organization that doesn't exist in every organization, and that is that we don't tell department heads, if you don't spend it, you'll lose it. Which is true. I mean, it goes away. They don't get it again. But they also know that they're expected to be as economical as possible and deliver service. And I think that's the message that they're working on, is that don't try to spend the last dollar of your budget. Try to come in under your budget. That's the success, is to beat your budget. Do what you were supposed to do, but do it less than your budget if at all possible. And most of the staff buys into that. I'd say all the staff buys into that. They can't always do it, but for the most part, they do. There's some exceptions. Sometimes we run over budget on a division or a department.
More questions on general fund overview? I have a question, Mr.
No,
Mayor?
go ahead. If you're going down to revenues.
I'm going down to general fund revenue.
Yeah.
We're not. No, we're still.
Okay.
We're okay, Gary.
Okay, sorry.
General fund revenues on page 7. No new taxes or significant fee increases, other than that 5% water and the 4% sewer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Again, extraordinary performance while maintaining services, not having to increase taxes. I appreciate that. Also, you commented regarding subsidizing new development, Mr. Hawker, and building fee, permit fees.
Yeah, I think that's a touchy one.
Nonetheless, I think it affects the public, the general public.
We take a loss on a building permit. The developer does not pay the full cost of processing the whole process of a building permit. And we're reluctant to propose an increase in those permits because construction is down, and although I think most developers and most builders will tell you time is more important than the cost of the permit. And so if they could reduce the time, they would be willing to pay more.
Reduce the time required to get a permit.
Yeah. But we find so often that the time lag is because they didn't have a complete submittal. So, I mean, it's a touchy one. It's one that either this committee or the council could choose to take a close look at. Say, is this time, or at what point is it time to raise the permit fees? At what time is it to raise the planning fees, meaning subdivisions and zonings and things like that? Because that's heavily subsidized.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I think I read that we're going to an online system. Is that gonna reduce those costs?
For building permits,
right.
we are.
Is that gonna anticipate we can maybe gain some there? Or?
Yes. That was heavily subsidized by the state. Actually, the builders agreed to an increase in building permit fees statewide, I believe, in order to get this system. And I think, unfortunately, that we're the only one in the county that has the e-permitting. And that's unfortunate, because it would be nice if a builder that builds in the county and Newport and Lincoln City and so on could do all of that, because they work in all over. And maybe they'll come along.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
I think it's time, and I think I've said so before, to look at that. I find it hard to believe that I can come in as a developer, plan to spend $30-40 million to buy land and to turn it into this, and if you increase my fees from $30,000 to $60,000, I won't do the project. I understand that the builders would like to keep whatever costs they can down, and I know by the time you pay all of the SDCs and stuff in this city, it's pretty substantial.
Sure.
But the truth of it is that all the builder's going to do is pass it through. And since most new homes here are in upwards of $350,000 to $750,000, that gives them some serious flexibility to be passing those kind of things on. So I think it's more than time that. Now, I'm hoping, as Mr. Hoagland pointed out, that the e-thing maybe will bring us some savings that we can apply towards this. But I don't see why this shouldn't be a fund that is self-sufficient.
And the state, our building permits are allowed to recover our costs on the average over time. And in the last couple of years, we have not. And we could do that. And I think it's a very useful discussion to have. I didn't propose it in the budget. It's certainly something that can be done.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I'm thinking of a somewhat different audience. I believe that some small projects also need a builder's permit. And so I'm thinking about those folks, and then I'm thinking about a comment made earlier that there are grandfathered properties which someday or another should be brought up to code, and this would be some slight encouragement. I'm not sure whether my comments are on the mark, but...
Well, if I could, staying with that same, so I don't know if I embraced the same quick reaction as Lenny has to upping fees, but so my question, Mr. Honker, is it not, nobody likes higher fees, so that's a given, but have we not consciously made decisions to keep the fees lower so that the developer will pick Lincoln City versus others? Because if they do, they develop property which then gets taxed, which increases our property tax revenue, which, if I remember right, was pretty low increase this year.
Yes.
So I have a footnote that says lost leader kind of concept. And do we not get paid back on Lenny's $31 million project, in tax revenue quickly? You don't have to.
Well, maybe. If you go down that road, and I think we're going to have a friendly argument here, I hope, because both sides of this are going to be right. If that theory is true, the bigger the city, the better off they are financially, and I challenge that.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to point out to Mayor Anderson that I was been both on and the chair of the Planning Commission for almost 11 years, and I have seen a lot of developers in front of me. First of all, most of those developments don't happen. I mean, it's just the silliest thing you've ever seen. I cannot tell you how many developments have come through this city for which we have expended a large percentage of our money, planning and so on and so forth, and they've never been built. And that is becoming the norm, not the exception. So when we spend money front end on the hopes that at the back end we'll get it, I can show you a whole bunches of property around this city in which we have spent significant money, and we have never gotten a nickel for it.
And I think there's two different arguments here. One is development fees. The other is building fees, and they're two different things.
I'm more interested in development fees than building fees.
I would be too, okay? Because, first of all, as far as like new subdivisions are concerned, we have a couple of subdivisions that are waiting for builders. We don't need a whole bunch more subdivisions right now. So if the fee would discourage a subdivision is one thing. If it discourages a building is another thing. We need buildings in the subdivisions that are approved and with the streets put in.
But we get real significant money out of the so-called subdivisions. Anyway.
Mr. Sprague.
Philosophically, I have a little bit of a hard time liking raising fees on building permits for the simple reason that, first of all, we're all paying taxes, and we're paying taxes for services. And so our taxes go into operating the building, the planning departments and the other departments. And so we're already paying for that service, and now we want to charge more for the permits on top of that. And philosophically, that just doesn't work for me.
This one's going to be, hey, this is yours, not mine.
But, Mr. Chairman?
One last time, ma'am.
Okay. Now, I'm not going to go philosophical. I'm going to go to the actual fact. The truth of it is that we're not paying 100% of the building, the cost of running, planning, and building out of our property taxes. A portion of it is being paid for by the people who use it. So it isn't like we've already paid for it and now we want somebody to come in and put gravy over our mashed potatoes. We are actually budgeting based on the costs that we get from the people who use it, not just the taxpayers. And that's the issue of what needs to be, how much more of that cost should the developers pay, thereby relieving the people of Lincoln City for paying for it.
Mr. Chair.
Still disagree.
Yes, sir.
Quick. There could be a middle ground. There's a benefit. The developer is getting a benefit, so should pay something, and presumably the public is getting a benefit from the development, so they should pay something.
All right, thank you. And on that,
Boy, I look forward to that discussion. There'll be a lot of public testimony.
moving on to another possibly controversial issue. The last paragraph under general fund revenues, Mr. Hawker, speaks of not imposing a franchise fee on water and sewer utilities. Unlike many cities, we do not do that. Has that been a conscious choice of ours?
No. Well, it hasn't been a public policy choice, meaning that it never got aired in a public discussion till right now. And that's good or bad because I never proposed it. In recent years, as cities were starting to get real serious budget problems and layoffs and service cuts, they began looking for things that weren't taxes, that were ways to have more money. And in the last 4 or 5 years, there's been a lot of cities that have imposed franchise fees on their own utilities. And we impose a franchise fee of 5% on electricity, on natural gas, for the use of our right-of-ways. We don't do that on water and sewer, even though we could do that. And it would probably be confined to the city itself, not our extended service area, because it's not our right-of-way. It's a fair chunk of change that you could, you could say today that the general fund is subsidizing water and sewer because of that, because we don't charge what we're entitled to. We own the right-of-way, we have the right-of-way, and any other utility that uses that right-of-way has to pay a 5%. But the water and sewer, who are separate businesses, they happen to be owned by the city, don't pay that. You could impose it. I've never proposed that we do so.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Ricketts.
a two-part question. Would such a fee require a vote of the citizens?
No.
And could such a fee be dedicated to streets?
No and no.
Could it be dedicated to the improvement of the water lines and sewage lines?
Oh, wait a minute. The second part of your question, if it comes into the general fund, it could be used for any purpose you want.
Okay.
It could be used, and what some cities do is put it into streets, because the impact of digging up streets is on the street. There's significant impact on streets when you put in a service line or we put a new water line in.
So the council could have a policy of putting it into streets, but it is not dedicated.
Doesn't have to be, is my understanding.
Mr. Chair.
No, that was all. That was if it couldn't be put to the streets, could it be put to the water systems and improving that system?
If it was put into the water system, it would be just like raising the rate 5% for water and putting it into water and bypassing the franchise. So, you know.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, I didn't know we were going to talk about this, but when I read it, I thought that in this aspect of it is kind of neutral in a way. But if you're thinking that based on water usage, you're going to get that percentage more out of a franchise fee, you won't. In fact, the person that would affect the most is the residents, because of the right-of-way, being with frontage as much for residents as it might be for certain commercial users. But I could think about that two different ways. But the one thing that I do want to point out is if we were to do this for our city while we're providing water to outside the city, I think we would start to see an expense for city residents that we couldn't pass through to outside the city customers. And we've done that once before, and I consider it a mistake, and that was when we passed a bond measure for our sewage treatment plant, which did not get passed through to out of city sewage users, those that use sewage.
Well, again, I haven't proposed it. I did want to mention it.
No, I know you didn't, and so I'm not. I hope it doesn't sound criticism, but there's a couple of different things you have to think about when you think about this.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. This is no personal criticism of yourself or any council decision, but there is a game that goes on, and I call it the government shell game. And this isn't a very good example of it, and we practice it a lot in this city in one way or the other, which is we're going to increase the general fund by charging the water fee. Now, we're not going to decrease the amount of water costs, so guess where the money is coming from? So I'm going to be paying it out of my left-hand pocket into my water rates, and I'm going to be getting the benefit of it into my right-hand pocket, and I've come out ahead. No, I haven't. I haven't come out one bit ahead. All you did was shuffle the money from point A to point B. And this is not a savings to the people.
No, well, point A being the resident, or excuse me, not the resident, the customer, and point B being the general fund.
But the general fund belongs to the taxpayers, and they're the people who are paying it.
Sure, of course.
So you can't or you won't ask them to pay more money into the general fund, so then you pull the shell game.
Hey, I'm not proposing
No,
it.
it's not a personal criticism, but it is a very common way that governments deal with it. And this general fund, with these interagency transfers, has always been a hard pot for myself because it is a way of increasing the general fund by taking the money out of someplace else. But all the money actually belongs to the people, and all they do is move it from one pocket to the other and say, by the way, we saved you money because we did this. Well, no, they didn't. They just shuffled the way the money was dealt with. So I would not like to see this happen.
If we had a private utility, I guess the other argument, and I'm not arguing for it, but let's say we didn't have a city water system or a city sewer system, that we had a private system, and some cities do, just like we had private, like some cities have electric power, and some cities have it themselves. Well, if we had a private water company, would we charge a franchise fee? I mean, so, again, I'm not recommending it. I only put it in here because it's becoming pretty common, and I wanted to just mention it, that's all.
Thank you for that.
And Mr. Chairman, I would like to, thank Mr. Rocker, because I view that as the kind of things that need to be done in a budget committee discussion, or at least get on the table of what some of the options might be. Doesn't mean we have to like them, but I would continue to ask Mr. Rocker to present to us what some options might be, and then we can debate it and stuff. So I'm hoping the discussion, good or bad, doesn't keep you from not moving it forward.
Yeah, when we talked a couple of years ago about the long-term future of streets, we talked about a fuel tax. And other mechanisms. There was a lot of different mechanisms that we could put more money into streets. This was mentioned at that time. I haven't mentioned it since. Someday, the streets, unless we do something different, someday the streets are going to be deteriorating compared to the current condition. This, again, will be one of the options that comes up at that time. Are water and sewer impacting the streets enough to charge this franchise fee? Okay.
All right, may we move on? City Council, any questions regarding that paragraph or notes?
I might remind Budget Committee, for those who weren't here, that last year the Budget Committee added into this area, and that's the VRD consensus builder. So there was an added to the budget by the committee, and as Mr. Hawker has indicated, this is not all the money's been spent and be rolling over to the other proposed fiscal year budget. And it's working, just as a report on the project, it's in motion.
And I think the public will be hearing a lot more about it real quick.
Mr. Sprague.
When I first looked at the breakdown of the city council side of the budget further on in the document, I saw that charge for the builder, the consensus builder, and it struck me as though it was distorting what the city council really costs the city, and it sounded to me like perhaps that should be in some other fund rather than in the city council side, since we're all volunteer and we don't make a dime. That it kind of looks like, well, where's that money going?
It could have been. It certainly could have been in a number of other places. But think of it this way. Look next year how great it's going to make you look.
You mean we took a demotion?
No, but you can count it as a cost savings.
You can put it somewhere else if you prefer. Yes.
All right, let's move on to administration. Footnotes, questions?
The one I had here, again, you've indicated your administrative assistant is leaving, and I didn't see if that was going to be replaced. I'm assuming it would be.
Yes.
But I'm wondering, is there a way, and maybe not here, but to think ahead of grant writing skills to somehow, in some openings that we have to, because you talked about assistant administrator and, and you make good stories, and that seems to be a big hole that we lost, with the parks arena. But I'm wondering if it couldn't fit somewhere else, or are we keeping that in mind?
Well, yes and no. As far as parks are concerned, I think we're, at least while the development activity is down, our senior planner in planning is picking up the ball quite well in parks grant writing. Boy, you bring up a real good topic, grant writing. I think she she did a lot of work, for example, and beautiful work on a grant to OWEB for acquisition of some property in our watershed that's pretty sensitive. And she's doing some other grant writing in that area. And in the Public Works area, our Public Works Department has been really successful in grant writing. So the areas that aren't being covered very well are the outside, anything outside of that area, of those two areas that I mentioned.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Possibly we could have some skill in that position.
How much would an assistant city manager cost approximately, to say the nearest 10,000?
Almost had to call Air Force One.
And also, it says later on the paragraph that they could handle the Parks and Recreation Director position. So would eliminating that position be handled by the Assistant City Manager?
I'm sorry.
There's two parts. How much would that be, and would that position replace the Parks and Recreation Director? Sorry.
Well, there's some choices there. Assistant City Manager, every city that has one has a different level, if you wish, as to whether or not that is an assistant or somebody who is strong enough to be a city manager. I'm going to say $75,000. Okay.
Salary and benefits?
I'm talking salary.
100,000?
Yeah.
More or less. Okay.
Yeah. Plus or minus, depending on, again, the quality of
the nearest 10,000.
The credentials.
100 to 110,000 would more or less be right. Or 90 to 110,000.
And the issue was, could that position function as Parks and Recreation Director, and there's staffing choices like that can be made.
Yeah, that would be up to you and to the council. I'm just wondering how much a body of that caliber would cost the city.
That's a rough one.
Mr. Chair, is that near the price of the Parks and Recreation Director?
Yeah, it'd be similar.
Again, just kind of pursuing the grant writing. Have we looked at, and not that it's not getting it done, but I'm wondering is there a way to even look at maybe contracting with someone and pay a piece of a finding fee, so to speak. Since we have a need for, I think, for grants, and if we could be trolling, and if someone was always trolling for grants for us, freeing up our staff now to not have to do that. And so we paid, it's kind of like a collection agency, you pay them a piece of the action.
I think you could certainly contract the service. Whether you could get qualified service on that basis, I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not aware. I can look into that and see if anybody's had any success at doing that.
I don't know. It's, okay.
Chester.
One moment. I've got a request by Mr. Ellingson.
Oh, no, I was just going to find out if we could get an extra budget book real quickly for a couple of people that are in the back that would help them follow this along. Evidently, we've got, yeah, thanks. I'm not sure how much longer they can stay, but Lieutenant Palmer is here with a couple of scouts.
Yeah.
And to their credit, they've sat here for however long it's been tonight. So
I think that's great.
this should be a good lesson for you young men.
Don't get involved in city politics.
No, on the contrary, it's something that you do want to get involved in. It's a very,
Just kidding.
very
Yes,
rewarding.
Thank you very much for being here.
Really, a lot more for you than me.
Speaks very highly of you all.
I've got a comment regarding administration. You make a very strong argument, Mr. Hawker, here for an assistant city manager, and I would encourage the city council to seriously consider that. And if there are no more comments or discussion regarding administration, we'll move on. All right, finance.
You know, some of my notes, and I know we've had past, I've had past discussion, but kind of a footnote, I think I would love to have credit card use, you know, across the board. I know we've got it in isolated now areas where a citizen can use a credit card or some kind of a card with city services or billings, but is there something other than maybe software or something that would preclude us? Because I know we've approved fees in order to, you know, get it back.
Well, the fee becomes, if I understand it correctly, the fees are kind of an average fee, not based on the cost of the transaction. And when you get into areas like, well, when you say across the board, if you get into SDCs, which is a real big chunk of money that somebody's paying, it would be a subsidy, essentially.
So that's what would have to be adjusted. We could. There's nothing getting in the way of not doing it.
I don't think so.
It's more that irregularity than of the fees we charge, that we would be charged as a city by the... Right.
The fee it would be disproportionate because we can't pass it along percentage for percentage. Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm wondering if we would want to break the agenda a bit by allowing citizens to comment now if they wish. The hour is...
I wouldn't have any problem with that. Any objections from the committee? Well, let's break the agenda then and move from finance on page 8 to comments from citizens present. Any citizens wish to comment regarding the budget?
Nice gesture.
All right then.
Our Eagle Scouts didn't want to...
How about Ron Tierney?
Seeing none, we'll move back to the
That was easy.
back to the agenda here.
Can't say we didn't try.
We're still on finance. Any more footnotes or questions on finance?
Mr. Chairman, the other one I had was, and it's more just questions under transit room tax, our ability to get the dollars quicker and maybe moving away from a quarterly pay to a monthly pay, and not sure I'm assuming having funds earlier would be to our benefit. We would know if we've got delinquents and it'd limit the size. Perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, from our perspective, meaning the government's perspective, I would love to see that happen. The difficulty is there's a cost to the businesses to do that more frequently than quarterly, and it's a trade-off. And you would certainly be hearing from the businesses. Now, that said, I have not researched the issue. I don't know, for example, if they have to report monthly or quarterly or what to the state, because there's a 1% state lodging tax. I have not researched this issue. I have not looked around and seen what other cities are doing. I know some get it monthly, and some get it quarterly. So there's two issues there. One is the frequency of the return, and two is the information that comes with it.
If I were a giver, I'd vote to only give it to you quarterly, and I'll delay that as well, if you don't mind, because the money has a value. So,
yeah. Mr. Chair.
Hang on.
But I think so. I guess all I'm looking for, something down the road that would be something that could come before council to talk, or is there a different mechanism?
No,
that's who drives it. Or is there?
No, that's what drives it. I'm trying to recall if I don't believe the enabling voter approval got into that.
Good. Okay.
We'd have to check that and see.
Okay.
Mr. Ellingson?
Yeah, I was just going to quickly say, it's a process to pay on a quarterly basis. I mean, you kind of have to stop what you're doing, and it wouldn't be twice as fast because you're doing it every month. That's all I'm saying. I mean, for the business, it's not quite as simple as just doing some arithmetic, and then there are forms that have to be filled out, and
I don't know what the cost of their collecting and remitting is. We pay 5% of the collection of the total to the business to collect it and remit. I don't know if that is a gain or a loss to them as far as the actual cost of that transaction.
But it's just I just throw out something to think about. The other, just going down the list, if I can, and it wasn't clear to me, the payroll taxes net payments totaling is that actually checks, or do we direct deposit? We do direct deposit. Okay, so this is just a figure, because is it not cheaper for us to do direct deposit than
on payroll? That's true. About I'm going to say 90% of employees get direct deposit.
That's great.
Also,
it's roughly the same amount of work as the check.
Oh, is it? Oh. Okay. Moving down, and it's been a question I've had forever, because this line item, accounts payable, $2 million spent locally, and that's a positive. Is there a way out of 12.3? I'm trying to figure out to get that bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know.
Well, we work at it.
It seems about the same. There must be a constant local vendors that we utilize. But there'd be some probably off-balance sheet value, certainly to the community and citizens, with that raising. And
any area that there's a huge exception to this, but any area where the local suppliers can supply it at a reasonable price, even though it's not necessarily the very lowest price we could get statewide or U.S.-wide or worldwide, up to a certain dollar amount. And the big, huge exception is contracting, like major contracts for construction or any major contract. there is no such thing as a local preference. On small purchases, we can consider our time, the convenience of it, the service that stands behind it, the whole thing. And so wherever we can buy a product locally that's of the quality we need at a respectable price, we do.
All right. Let's move on, if we may, to the library. Comments, questions, footnotes?
Well run and increasing.
Yes, yes.
Nope.
All right, then. Municipal court. Questions, comments?
It's kind of a sad, I appreciate the example, and what's happening to the revenue stream, and our brethren at the state level seem to want to go first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe with a little bigger share. And there's a lot of pushback from cities across the state on this change. And I wouldn't be surprised to see some modification of this in the future, because there is a lot of pushback. My understanding, I could be wrong on this, in order for the city to get the same revenue that it got before from a ticket, if you will, the judge is going to have to charge more. Now, that's a decision that hasn't been made, and council may want to weigh in on that decision, or may want to direct that decision.
Okay. Anything else on the municipal court? Seeing nothing, let's move to city attorney.
Mr. Chairman, my only footnotes, and David, is just a question, because the comment about additional attorney assistance on the roads and annexation, is that figured into the $30,000 that we've got budgeted for special counsel, or would this be an item that we need to add to?
It depends on where current litigation goes, to answer your question in a very obtuse way.
Last year we added in this category from the budget committee. So
did we?
We
did.
25,000.
Yeah. I can't answer it because I don't know how much to say we need to reserve for current litigation, and we have some.
So it's possible. Maybe as we get through this, we'll have no more.
Yeah.
Okay.
It could be way short. To answer your question.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, let's move on to planning, please.
My notes have all kind of, we've talked about in other areas. The
okay, good.
Thank you.
Good. Building inspection.
Seems to have that. All right.
Moving on, police department. Footnotes, questions?
My only question is the DARE fund is now through the line item with the general fund, right? Is it less than the previous amount, or is it still around the same amount of dollars for that?
Yeah, you might just sit up here. They're going to get more detailed than my memory is going to.
We used to do fundraising and stuff for DARE, which we no longer do, but there's a residual balance that hasn't been spent yet, and so we want to be sure that we spend it in accordance with what the fundraising was, but we're not anticipating any future revenues. So every year we're going to budget the residual balance of that amount that hasn't been spent until it's gone.
Okay. Glad I didn't try that one.
Any other questions? Hearing none. Recreation Department.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
on page 13, next to last paragraph, there's this sentence. The community center pool is now more than 30 years old and is in need of some major work to ensure customer safety and improve overall aesthetics. And it would seem to me that there can be no higher priority than ensuring that that pool or any part of the community center is safe, if nothing else, to avoid a humongous lawsuit. So is there more money than is asked for that should be put into this?
Well, there were two competing needs, and I was really working to control the cost of recreation. I'm trying to control the amount of subsidy that comes out of the general fund and decrease the subsidy. And there were two competing needs, and I finally said one or the other. And the two competing needs were etching of the concrete surface around the pool, and it's actually, I don't think etching is the right word. It's grinding the recommendation was grinding a swirl pattern in the concrete, and that's proprietary equipment. You can't rent it, you can't buy it, and it was like $19,000 to have that done. The other competing need was about $13,000 to redo the lockers so that we keep the quarters, and that would result in probably a one-year payback of the money spent. I don't know if there are other treatments to the pool deck that make sense or not, or if there's other mechanisms. I put money in for one or the other. I didn't put money in for both, and that is a decision that needs to be made.
Do we also have an issue with a boiler, Mr. Hawker?
Well, yes and no. We could replace the controls on the boiler, which are really ancient, and it's $2,000 or $3,000 to replace the controls. But the boiler itself, we have little confidence that over the next few years it's going to fail to the point where we could be down. I mean, it can be repaired when it's down. They can retube it. We have retubed parts of it. The basic framework we think is sound, but we're not sure. But we're looking at potentially protracted downtime that could be weeks, meaning that facility would be shut down. Not only the pool, but the lockers because of the showers, because it all comes from that boiler. And I guess I figured sooner or later we had to deal with this. We can probably gain some efficiency from a newer boiler than one that's 30 years old. And even though we have a heat recapture system there. So in the facilities capital fund, there's 120 or 130, do you remember which it is? One or the other. $120,000 as a rough estimate of the cost of replacing the boiler. Now, the first step of that would be not to go to a boiler company and say, replace our boiler. Would probably be to get a mechanical engineer to review the system and say what we really need, what's efficient, what works, and spec something, and then get a price on it. We haven't gone that far yet.
Thank you.
If I may, would it be able to, there's mats there now, there's one mat there. Would it be possible to put that kind of foam mat around the entirety of the pool on top of the concrete, which is currently from the main entrance to the big pool? Also, would any kind of maintenance be able to be done during that September time when they let the dogs go in the pool after that? I'm sorry. So,
Kimberly is shaking
a couple more
her head in the
questions.
affirmative.
So,
she's saying yes.
Also, we raised the rates to it and also decreased the hours. Being Lincoln City's family area, what was the decision? I don't know. If we could put more money, there's only a couple days that families go there with kids as opposed to every night of the week or things like that. If that couldn't be increased, I suppose. I don't know.
Increase hours?
Well, increase hours, and then we just increased the rates, and now we decreased the hours.
Yeah, but we only
increasing the rates.
We only decreased the hours on very low utilization time between 8 and 9 p.m. 5 days a week, where it was very little lower utilization. What I didn't realize at the time, by the way, is that there were some bridge players in the back room in the senior center that were also being affected, and that is unfortunate. But as far as the actual use of the pool and the gym and the fitness facility, there was almost no use between 8 and 9 p.m. on weeknights. Otherwise, I would not have recommended, or I would not have authorized that cut.
Yeah, I just speaking from experience, that the time that you can take your kids there's only a certain amount of times, and that was during one of those times, was those nights.
But it wasn't being utilized then.
Okay.
Or at least the records that I got showed that it was not.
I was there.
Okay, I'm
must
sorry.
have been the one.
I'm sorry about that.
I was wearing
There you go.
So that,
Actually, not to belabor that, but the testimony and stuff that we got when we dealt with those at city council level was really a questioning of, the rates aren't high enough. We were criticized for not raising them,
yeah, it's not. I mean, I'm not saying the price. I'm saying the time.
While we're on recreation, I need to point out a mistake in this message. I got Debbie Amoni got an email today from Jim Taylor, who was on this committee but not present tonight, and his comment on that. My statement, I'm quoting him, our fitness machines average 6,200 hours of use per year each. That does not seem plausible, as the community center is only open as fewer than 5,000 hours. And obviously, there's a mistake there. So the average was for the 7 years that it had been open, and if you divide that number by 7, it comes out 800 and some. I apologize for the mistake. I read some notes wrong and didn't think.
That's some good math on Jim's part.
Yeah. He's proving that he read it.
He read it, yeah. Let that be a secret, Mr. Chairman, for the committee members. All you have to do is find one gem and bring it forward.
He also passed along a few other comments, and when we get to those issues, I will mention, if we get to those tonight, I'll mention what he had to say.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the only other one I shouldn't say that. I have a question up here in the personnel staff and it just because it jumps out. We call a position soccer coordinator, and before all the soccer fans come after me, I love soccer, but I see, I'm more curious. Hopefully the description is different than what it says, because I see absent, baseball or football or other youth sports, and so I'm wondering why we're funding, if we are, an exclusive soccer activity.
I'm going to pass that one to Gail.
I figured you would. Gail,
it saves my voice, I don't know how long we're going to go, so.
Soccer is comprised of two different seasons, an outdoor and an indoor season, and we have between 150 and 170 youth participating in each league. Ray Santos was our soccer coordinator in the past, and what this person does is bring all the kids together, have tryouts, divide the children into teams, find coaches, produce a schedule for the league. And because it's so huge, encompassing both teams, it's not something that our recreation supervisor can do on his own. In the past, a recreation supervisor has taken care of volleyball, basketball, track and field, cross country, our other sports. But we think the expertise of another soccer coordinator to help make that season expand and grow.
So again, it begs the question, though. I'm led to believe these same activities happen in other sports by other entities other than a government. So the real question is, why is government, in essence, through the parks, through the community center, doing this activity? Do you get my question?
I'm not sure I understand.
My understanding is there's a football league,
right,
youth
which is
football league,
an independent football league,
right, that takes care of youth, has football, does scheduling, finds coaches, all the things you just told me about that the city is doing for soccer. And there's a baseball, youth baseball, that does all this. They're out fundraising, all the kind of stuff to do whatever they do. So all I need is why soccer? Why has the city chosen to fund a soccer coordinator and all this activity when other sports are on their own?
There's only 2 other sports that are on their own: baseball, Youth League Baseball, and Youth League Football. Football was just started a couple of years ago. Youth League Baseball used to be run by Parks and Recreation, and I'm not sure how long ago, it was before I came on board, they split off from the city. They wanted a more competitive league than a Parks and Rec league, and so they went off on their own. All other sports are handled by the city: volleyball, basketball, and now soccer.
Okay, so it's by choice? We'll assume that, so if we get a funding request from football or baseball to assist them in efforts, would we entertain that?
It's a possibility we could take it on.
I mean, I'm sure there's probably caveats.
Is there revenue implications?
Yes, there is. Yes, we do make revenue, from offering these sports to youth in the city.
But would it be fair to say, and that we're kind of maybe germinating these, growing them, and they'll eventually spin off? Because
well, I think our intent in bringing back the soccer coordinator position is to make it a stronger league so that we can keep it and maintain some revenue from it.
Is it a break even or is it a subsidy?
With soccer, it's a break even.
Okay.
Because there's so many youth involved.
Okay. If it's a break even, I don't want to add to the subsidy of the community center.
I understand. Okay, good question. Thank you.
Well, no, it really isn't much, but it's more the principle of the thing. So thank you.
It certainly is an area of a lot of growth potential.
Very much.
Because I've got a junior golf program that I'm going to sell you soon.
We'll talk later.
Thanks, Gail.
How about dodgeball?
Mr. Chair, don't forget softball.
Oh, softball.
Can we move on?
I just one quick question.
Yes.
Curtis Field, I believe, the city maintains that, doesn't it?
Yes.
Which is a subsidy to various sporting activities.
Thank you for that. Okay, let's move on to general fund non-departmental, including personnel, emergency services, sustainability, ADA compliance, local bus, outside agency funding, and wellness.
Chair, I guess my only observation is the sustainability committee has been, somewhat inactive for lack of citizen interest, not from staff promoting it by any means, and it's only $2,000. But
yeah, it used to be $5, and I always put that in as a carrot for them to say if they proposed something that made some sense and was within the guidelines of how government spends money, that I would okay a purchase. And they did a number of programs, and this year so far I don't think there's been any. And I've cut the budget from $5,000 to $2,000. I don't know what the future of that is. It would depend on whether there's a aggressive committee willing to do some work.
I guess this raises the question, next item, the ADA compliance. And earlier we had seen a fund in the, and you make reference to it, the urban renewal. I guess I was either expecting a starting, is additional money going from the city aspect into the same wider study?
Yeah, there's $12,000 here. There's 50 in urban renewal and 19 in streets.
So the combination of 80,000 or so is the enough to get us a plan and start making some...
It's enough to get a pretty sizable start.
Okay. That's
It's
right.
not-
So,
yeah.
so what really this is funding, it's not funding yet any actual corrections or edit. This is to get us to the...
Right.
Okay. I did note, I saw 4,000 over in parks, that would...
Well, there are some improvements. What we're talking about now is not actual
This
improvements.
is the actual plan.
Planning.
Gotcha.
Inventorying, planning.
Okay. Good.
Anybody else? All right, let's move on to Lincoln Square pardon me.
Before we do, and this may just simply wait for council, but I'll just make I'll just mention something. On the outside agency funding, traditionally the city council deals with that. I have never made a recommendation on how the outside agency funding, I think it's $45,000, should be spent. Council has often had a committee of council look at those requests carefully. We might want to have council, even before the council starts talking about the budget, appoint a committee so they have plenty of time to look, and if council wants to, I'll put it on an agenda to talk about that.
Thank you. How about Lincoln Square Operations Fund?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Ricketts.
whenever I see something about deferred maintenance, I get uneasy. So I'm wondering what it takes to build, to get Lincoln Square up to the maintenance it should have. What I'm seeing is this fund is not adequate to pay for the major replacements that come.
No, but they are being funded through the Facilities Capital Fund. It used to be 5-6 years ago that we had enough income coming into Lincoln Square from Price and Pride and from Career Tech and so on to pay for everything that was needed for this building. But as the building got older and more things started to pop up, more heating and ventilation units on the roof and more aging of the facility, it got to be more than that income was. And so at the same time when bonds were paid off on City Hall a couple years ago, that proceeds, which is from a transit room tax, a 1% transit room tax, was put into a facilities fund to fund city facilities wherever they might be that couldn't be funded elsewhere. And so the needs of this building are the capital needs, replacement needs of this building are being handled through the Facilities Capital Fund.
Are the city facilities being currently well maintained?
Yes. Maybe I better rethink that. If you mean every city facility, I mean, I was dealing here with Lincoln Square. I'd have to think hard to answer that question of every city facility. If you talk about all the parks, are they getting at, there's a point where I'd have to say no, but...
Well, if you have to think hard to find exceptions, a yes is good enough for me.
Okay.
Anything else on Lincoln Square? Let's move on to Facilities Capital Fund then.
In the list of proposed projects, we'll see again in the actual numbers, the budget. So, and we talked about the boiler.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, they're listed here in the message, but they're also in the numbers.
Yeah.
Anything else? Next is Public Safety Fund, dispatch.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
are you looking and watching what it is that Lincom is doing?
Yes.
Because they seem like, to me, that they're a very similar situation to us.
Well, I don't think they're certainly not identical, but yes, we are watching.
Okay, there. So you're looking at that potential path?
Certainly.
Okay.
The last sentence, Mr. Hawker, of that section, this is because our dispatch division performs many tasks that cannot be outsourced and must remain. Tasks such as?
Well, watching the holding cells. Just by way of example, some records management duties, some things that would not outsource. So when you say what would it cost to outsource the dispatch and 911, and what are we paying? So the savings is blank. The difference, well, it's not. Okay. We have 24-hour-a-day police station presence. Would we still want 24-hour-a-day police station presence or not? There's a lot of issues like that.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you. Yes.
I think that it would be worth mentioning to the public that the reason that we haven't undertaken something similar to what Newport, Toledo, and that part of the South County are doing is because we do not have there's a redundancy between here and Salem, which is the ultimate point of dispatch. And until we have two lines, one that backs up the other, that we're not willing to undertake this.
Well, that's certainly one of the major reasons, and we will have that redundancy. And perhaps that gives us more options than we certainly have today. Because today, if we had outside dispatch, and we've had over the last number of years, catastrophic failures of the phone system, that would have meant that the 100 calls a day we get for 911 and for dispatch, during a day that the phone was out, we wouldn't have had any.
That's right.
Anything else on Public Safety Fund, dispatch? And then let's move on to Internal Service Funds. I'd just like to comment that the number of vehicles that the city has and the fact that we can maintain them with 1.5 FTEs is, to me, astonishing.
Yeah, and while we're on that, I'll mention that they not only maintain them, but in the case of when we get a new vehicle, they put on the attachments, if you will, the light bars, the light on top, the radio communications, all the peripherals, and that way in some cities, for example, in police cars, contract out to have that wiring all installed by somebody else. But then when there's a problem, you go to the valley, take the car to the valley to get somebody who knew the wiring. There's a huge amount of wiring involved in that to fix it. And the other thing, that we get a new piece of equipment like a new excavator that we recently got or a street sweeper, they're responsible for training our operators how to maintain, how to care for that, how to use that machine. And so they do a lot more than just repair it and service it.
Well, I'm glad to see we're taking care of the building that they have to work in. Any other questions? Internal Service. Then let's move on. Information Technology.
This is one area, remind the committee, where we also added, I'm assuming ended up the website enhancement, or the extra $50,000 ended up in here. With the desire from the committee last year was to give the dollars necessary to perhaps catapult the city's website and activities in this IT area, and hoping, Mr. Hawker at that time cautioned us that nothing's a one-time shot, that there's maintenance costs and data entry and all this kind of stuff. I guess the question would be, are we making progress in the website arena? And because it's kind of hard to, for this, I think, average citizen to perhaps see the differences.
We're now, we've selected a company to do the website for us, meaning the building of the website. It's called GovOffice. They do about 1,100 cities, or about 1,000 cities. We look carefully at many different options, including an independent contractor to develop one from our specifications, and that got to be honest with you, got to be beyond us. So we picked a company that has successfully developed websites for a lot of cities where they're under contract. We're working with them now. It's going to be a couple months, and you're going to be essentially a brand new website with a lot more usability than we have today. And most important, it will not depend on our two IT, information technology, if you run across that acronym a lot, our two IT people to make changes. This new site will allow a person in each department to keep it current. And they have the information. It's more efficient that way. And so that was the primary reason we went the way we did. We also, and we're just about ready to have a test on streaming video, if we haven't already. Not yet. Streaming video means that what's going out the door here right now on Channel 4 could also be going into a website, and delayed also, you could get it, you could call it up on demand.
We didn't get it quite hooked up. We were hoping to test it tonight, but next week.
So we'll test it and then roll it out.
I compliment that, because that's something I've heard a lot from the citizenry that don't have access to Charter,
right,
and appreciate the audio, but would like the video aspect of it.
And also, if they're not available when we're broadcasting, to be able to call it up on demand.
Right. And have we looked at it? Is there a way we can find that as a revenue source? Advertising, pop-ups or something.
Don't think so.
Because I looked ahead, and over here under Government Access Fund, I see an annual expense to this luxury, and it's more than a luxury. It's it's something we need to do for the people. I understand that, but I guess I was just looking for an opportunity to have someone else assist us.
Well, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
You're doing that right now for free at the end of every city council meeting.
I hear you.
I haven't looked at that. Might ask our supplier if they have any ideas along that area.
I should say we all are, and not affix it to one person.
Anybody else?
Mr.
Information technology. Yes.
Is the building of the website a one-time deal, or is it something that we will have to contract yearly for them to?
Yeah, there's going to be an annual maintenance fee to maintain the software, not the site, the software, Debbie, and the hosting of it. Debbie, how much?
I think it's about $900 a year.
I thought it was $4,000 a year, but it's not that much. But the real cost of a website is in getting the information current and putting it on and keeping it current. And that is always going to be a staff function. There's nobody from the outside that could come in here and figure out what we're doing and put it on.
Right.
She's going to actually give you an answer.
Is it fair, Mr. Talker, to say that our hope would be some of the transparency for the citizenry to get information off the website, such as financials and that kind of stuff, so they, again...
We'll be putting more on, for sure. Now, what we're doing initially, one of the first things we're doing is looking at the hits on our existing site. And we want to make sure that those are getting good billing on the front page, so that those that, and council meetings are real, council packets, council meetings, meeting schedule is a real high hit rate. And so we want to make sure that that's not 4 pages down. I think it's 3 pages down now. We want to make sure that you can go to the front page and click on something and get you there, okay, intuitively, quickly. So that's the first thing, is to make sure the stuff that people are asking a lot about is real easy to find. And then expanding as much information as we think we can keep current.
It's $950 a year.
All right.
I think you're thinking of streaming video.
Oh, I am thinking streaming video. I'm sorry. There's a lot of numbers in here, guys.
Gotcha. More questions? I would encourage the public to, this is on our website, is it not, this budget message?
Yes.
I would encourage the public to look at page 17 at the astonishing array of managing issues that the staff has to deal with. I mean, we have an astonishing array. So if you're interested at all, it's on page 17 in the budget message.
And every year it grows.
Pardon me?
Every year it grows. A lot of our departments are very into technology and getting new things every year. So I have to learn and keep up with all that new stuff.
Yes, yes.
PD is a good example. There's a lot of systems there that IT has to help support.
Any questions on GIS, Geographic Information System? That's another technology that's improved efficiency quite a good deal, has it not, Mr. Hawker?
It has, but I think in that particular case, more than efficiency, which it has done, is the quality of the information you're getting. That particularly the Planning Commission and staff that are getting, when somebody comes in for a development, I mean, where are the sewer lines? What's the topography? What's the zoning? What's the geographic? I mean, on and on and on. Where that stuff is readily available now, instead of looking at 15 different maps and whatever, and taking a huge amount of staff time to answer those questions, it's there.
Thank you. I would... Pardon me. Go ahead.
If I may, would this be able to determine where those lost water spots are that we are having such a problem with? Or is this just the location? I know it says the condition and the age and size, but could it determine where those trouble spots are?
It can't, unfortunately. I wish it could.
Before moving on, I would entertain a request for a 5-minute break.
How much longer are we going to be here?
Well, let's talk about that after the break.
Oh.
I move that we take a break of 7.5 minutes.
All right.
I'll second that.
All right. Let's break for 7.5 minutes. And
for those not familiar with the restroom situation, there are 2 convenient ones. One is right back there for the committee members, and there's one back here for the public, and there's a couple more way down the hall if you need the whole 7.5 minutes.
Thank you.
On record.
Okay, regarding time limits, with the consent of the committee, I would like to finish up with the budget message, which ends at page 29, and call it a night after that, if that's agreeable with everybody. Okay. Ms. Nelson, does that satisfy you?
That's close enough.
Good. Okay, then, let's move on to Government Access Fund, page 18. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Let's move on to Affordable Housing Fund.
Mr. Chairman, I think this area, and we're fortunate we have a fund and have some money put aside. I think as the message has indicated, it's what are we going to do with it and need to do, because certainly the workforce affordability issue around housing isn't going away even with depressed housing costs. And that's what I read in the message. We're doing some things to our credit, and not to give away the money, meaning let's keep it in a housing fund and work towards a policy or direction of what are we going to do with it. Is that
absolutely
pretty much the message?
Mr. Taylor had a comment on that one, and I mentioned it as they came up. I would try to mention them. He said, although potential acquisition should be carefully assessed, time is of the essence. If too much time lapses, bargains in this buyer's market could disappear. We hope to have a workshop with council on how we would best move forward with our resources in the next 2 months. And then hopefully we'll come out of there with some direction and make something happen.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
A few of us on the council attended the meeting at with the Land Trust, and there were some astounding statistics that came out of that meeting. One of which was that many of the people who have thought about applying for jobs in Lincoln City found that housing was too expensive, and so they didn't even apply. And so even some of our own employees have to live outside the city because they can't afford the housing in the city. And so it really is a problem, and I think it's a problem that most people don't realize we have, and I think it's important that we air that.
One of the things that we found recently, or not found, that many people have known that I didn't know, is that while housing purchases are significantly down, the rental market is pretty expensive for decent housing.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
A comment and a question. Comment is, I understand there are banks that are sitting on property, and so contacting a bank for property is a possibility to work out some kind of behind-the-scenes deal. My question is, are there any city employees who are now renting residential quarters from the city?
Yes. There's 3. We have 3 homes, 2 of which are being rented to city employees on a longer-term basis, like a yearly rent, just because we have that asset. One of those is right next to City Hall, where we purchased a house for eventual parking lot expansion, and we have the house in the meantime. Another is the old My Sister's Place. And then the third house is being used for transitional housing, which is also being rented, and that's for an employee that you hire that is out of the area. We found that they have a hard time finding a rental unit that meets their needs. We have a very nice manufactured house that was donated to the city by my administrative assistant and her husband, and put on a city lot, and it's being rented as transitional housing for new employees. And we find if they can get a place to rent, they start looking around and finding a place to buy in the city, more so than looking somewhere else. And so it's encouraging people to anyway, I think it's being successful.
Anything else regarding Affordable Housing Fund? All right, let's move on to Visitor and Convention Bureau.
This is one of the areas, like you heard earlier, about urban renewal that's in a transition. The Visitor and Convention Bureau made some initial recommendations, which are in the budget message, and we have kind of based the budget on that. But there's some more to detail to come out of that, and from future meetings of the Visitor and Convention Committee, recommendations to council to be more specific on some of the recommendations, and so this is a little bit boilerplate at this point.
Questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
For the first 11 years that I lived here, I was on the VCB committee, and after that, I've just kind of watched it. It's interesting to me to watch it swing back and forth from we're going to do events to we're not going to do events to we're going to do events to we're not going to do events. So it's very curious how that works. The one comment I had on what I saw here, though, was the idea of completely getting rid of a visitor center. I worked briefly, like about 6 months, down in this visitor center here for a while. All right, I didn't work at the visitor center, but I worked next to it. And I saw the people here get a lot of bang for their buck by people calling in, and then they're saying, well, what can we do for you? Have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? And I know that people do social media these days, not me, but other people do. But I just wonder how much of that personal, come here, or meet us, we're friendly, we'll do more things for you, we'll lose if we don't have any visitor center of any kind.
Well, I mean, you're correct that decisions to come to Lincoln City are more and more based on the electronic media, the social media, the websites, increasingly almost like a snowball. The question is once they're in once they've decided to come to Lincoln City, how important is the visitor center walk-in? Well, we're seeing fewer and fewer people walking into the visitor center, and so, it's a good point you're making. It's of less importance than it was 2 years ago, and 5 years ago, and 10 years ago. Does it still have relevance? I don't know how much it has. It's a good question.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I've staffed the chamber office several times on a Saturday, and if they come from the north end, it's really easy to see the chamber office and they stop there. But I have seen many, many people who have driven clear through Lincoln City and not seen the visitor center. And it's more visible now than it was. And I think that with the new sign,
I think that can help.
That will help. But it really surprised me how many people did not even see it. Because they look for a chamber of commerce.
That's fair criticism, and I'm really hoping the new sign helps.
Just as another opinion, I read the rest of that item, or other reasonable options, which to me negates, getting rid of, or the implication of getting rid of. Because I think, Lenny, as you've indicated, there is value. What I've heard is an awareness that how we deliver visitor center information has changed, and we've not moved to it. And but I didn't and don't interpret this to be get rid of it. It might not be at, i.e., the cultural center, but it could be the somehow enhancing the chamber or some other look. Because I think especially boomers like ourselves, still look to something other than electronic, and so I just see that moving with the times.
More questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I was very confused by the paragraph at the bottom of page 22 and the top of page 23. There were comments about the events versus,
Attractions,
right. And how the change would help some things. But then you make a blanket statement here that the changes would also reduce or eliminate the partnerships with all these entities. There was also a comment earlier that if things were reduced, others, like the other partnerships would be enhanced. So, what can you explain that paragraph to me?
Yeah, I mean, I think the partnerships that are mentioned, like at the top of page 23, are not major cooperative ventures. They're spin-offs. They help out with an event, for example, and get some of the revenue from the event. The other kind of partnerships are those of which somebody's willing to stand up and say, we're willing to take on that event, possibly with some subsidy. So we're really two different classes there, if you will, we're talking about.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
It's my understanding that the council, the staff, and the committee are working quite hard on thoroughly investigating and thinking through about this fund and what is going on with this. And is that right?
Yes, certainly.
Any more? Mr. Mayor?
I'm reading my footnotes here. Thank you. No, I think I'm all right. Like Ricketts said, we hear a lot about this in other venues.
I have two.
Yes.
On 21, looks like there's two typos. The media, web, social PR, it says approximate labor cost $26,000, and then the approximate cash outlay, there's apostrophe 2,000. And then below the on-site visitor information is $2.6 million. So I just
What's the second one? I'm sorry, I didn't.
The pack. I believe the development on-site visitor information.
Let's hope that there's just extra zeros in the decimal and the comma is not in the wrong place.
Right.
I need to check that first mistake.
Right.
The second one, obviously,
it's just 26,000.
Yes, 26,000. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are we ready to move on? All right, then. Let's go to Parks Maintenance.
Mr. Chairman, before we do, I guess just a question of procedure. Mr. Hawker, I'm reading one of my notes and reminded of the ability of VCB to continue to be a what I've termed in the past a corporate sponsor of events. And maybe that was a bad concept since it's not a corporation. But what I meant was that on behalf of the city of Lincoln City, that through VCB we could write a check to events or activities that benefit the whole of Lincoln City.
Yes.
And just write a check. And that way we know what our costs are and refined. So my question is if that's a good idea or not, but if it does a separate fund in the budget need to be established, or is there room within the existing accounting or funding sources that, it could be carved out?
I think it can be carved out. Let me look closer, and maybe it's just I've got so many numbers running through my head right now. I'd like to look at that question a little bit closer.
Okay, so I appreciate it, and it's really something parallel, so that because and I was that paragraph on page 22 at the bottom. There are a lot of entities there that have benefited from VCB in the past, and there's no reason why they wouldn't, and why if it passed some kind of a smell test, a check could be written for $100, $500, $1,000 to continue on an activity, but absent.
Certainly.
So that, I guess that's all I'm trying to make sure there's a fund similar to our the one where we use nonprofit, have to be a nonprofit. I guess I'm looking at one similar that says you don't have to be a nonprofit. It's good for the city. And we'd step up along with Tanger Mall, the casino, others, that write a sponsor check.
You get a little bit into the legal aspects of that, and that's something that we're going to have to research a little bit more. Obviously, there has to be a governmental purpose. If it's not, well, it has to have a governmental purpose no matter where it goes. If it's not going to a nonprofit,
to the attracting of
it could go to a corporation, it could go to an individual, it could go to anybody, but I think there may be different restraints at some point if it's not a nonprofit. We haven't researched that.
So again, I want to make sure that the benefit of the community, not of the sponsoring corporation. Right. I mean, ultimately, it's to get tourists and additional people to Lincoln City or to an event that they're enjoying while they're here.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, and we do some of that now.
I know we do. That's why I just want to make sure that if we can see our way clear, that does that need an identified fund or some action by this budget committee?
Okay. Let me, at the next meeting, try to answer that question.
Anybody else? Let's move on to Parks Maintenance Fund.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Hawker, how much money would it take to adequately maintain the parks? More than what you have?
Well, I think they're being adequately maintained now. I mean, you can point to some and say it would be nicer to have more maintenance here, more maintenance there, but adequate, adequate is a word that I'd say we comply with. The real question is, what's that going to look like in a few years?
Okay, so let's ask that question. To have more than adequate, to have good maintenance in the future, about how much money would that take per year?
Well, I'll go beyond what I just said. I think we have good maintenance today. To keep the same level of maintenance that we have today, whether it's good or adequate, okay, to keep the level that we've got today is going to require either more money or cutting back some maintenance or transitioning to some lower maintenance.
How much more money?
Well, you have
nearest 20,000.
Oh, I would say you probably need to roughly put $50,000 a year progressively, 50, 100, 150, 200, if we don't take any other action. Could be 30, 60, 90, okay, but that's within your 20.
The equivalent of about one person then.
Yeah, again, but I think we can moderate that to some extent by looking real carefully at the facilities we maintain, looking at the level of maintenance that they require, and seeing what we can do to change some of that. We have, by way of example, we have a couple of really heavily used, very old restrooms that were not built to a standard that can be easily maintained. And they're wood structures, they have old facilities in them, they get rot and so on. They're not like the more modern facilities. They're expensive to maintain. At what point do we say from the Capital Facilities Fund or from some area, do we say, let's tear them down and put something there that's going to last and be easier to maintain? How about a restroom like at Holmes Road Park that is hardly ever used? Do we want to keep that? How about at Sand Point, where there's a restroom outside the city that we're maintaining that probably gets little visitor use? Who are we maintaining that for? What about the landscaping? Can we use lower impact, lower maintenance landscaping? Those kind of things. There's a lot to look at.
said, Mr. Chair, there's a list of park facilities maintained. Could we get that and like the responsibilities that we're seeing that they need to do? Also, that full-time position to seasonal, does that fall back on we're still going to pay them the unemployment when they're not working, you know?
Probably.
Right, so full-time, if we could use another body, then why would that get reduced to seasonal, plus we're paying their unemployment?
Well, we looked at that pretty carefully as to which one was going to be the most efficient and cost-effective, and I think we've got the right answer. Well, I can't prove that yet. And yes, we can get you a list of facilities maintained.
Anyway, if I may, if they were just, cleaning the bathrooms and emptying the garbage, 8 hours a day, I don't know. And then, I don't know. But
We'll get you what we've got.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think it's quite a bit.
Anything else? Yes.
We'll probably get that to everybody digitally.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask if you could do it.
Rather than give you paper at this point.
Good. Henry?
Mr. Hawker, on 51st Street, the covered area down there, the picnic area, things like this, is really in need of some basic maintenance, or is it a budget item to have it painted or whatever to keep it from rusting any further? It's like I go down 51st Street and you see this beautiful archway and everything else like this, and you get down to the end, and like I say, the deterioration of the barbecue area down there, the covered area, is starting to deteriorate pretty bad. I don't know if that's a basic maintenance or is that a budget item?
That would have to be a separate budget item. Repainting that structure would be a budget item.
Okay, because like I say, it's starting to look pretty shabby down there.
Yeah, and of course, the longer it goes, the more it costs. And we've had the same issue come up with the street shop building where we
That's what came to mind when I saw the street shop building was in here, and I didn't know if that was basic maintenance or a budget item. So
it would have to be a budget item.
Okay.
It may be at the point where we need to talk about that.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I didn't know we were going to go into this kind of detail on this, but if you wanted to put something on a list to do something about, or maybe not, the dock down there on 51st too, when you go out onto the dock, did I miss that? I mean, it's something. It's something.
Let me rephrase the answer to your earlier question about how much more it's going to cost.
Just everything you know something about. What you don't know, you don't know. So, but yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
Okay. Last chance for park maintenance. Moving on. Open Space Fund. Any comments, questions? Hearing none. Unbonded Assessment Fund. It's a short and sweet paragraph. Moving on. Transportation funds.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
First, on that one, have we seen an overlay schedule yet for this coming year?
No.
No?
We're still evaluating what's under the potential streets.
Okay, because like I say, I was wondering about Southwest 51st Street and High School Drive, where we've got the embankments that are starting to slide away and things like this. If those were included, or anything going towards those, or they've been prolonged, put down the road, or... So I was looking back in the back for a schedule, and I couldn't find anything on a schedule for those.
We don't have a schedule yet. Again, the primary reason is we're still assessing. We know some streets that need overlay. We're assessing what's under them so that we make sure that we don't overlay something that there's bad sewer or water service or water mains underneath it. And so all we've done is budget an amount of money.
That's an issue every time we do overlay, is it not, Mr. Hawker?
Yes.
Something I hadn't considered.
Yeah, we've been pretty careful and so far pretty successful in not overlaying a street and then finding real serious problems underneath it.
Yeah.
And that can happen.
Yes. Anybody else? Let's move on to water funds.
Same thing again, Mr. Hawker, on water funds. We had a briefing about the Schooner Creek, where the 24-inch main goes underneath the creek and things like that. I noticed the schedule out for 2 or 3 years, along with the replacing the water line, going across the bridge. All those are going to last for the 2 or 3 years it's going to take before we have the money in our budget to replace them, or?
Well, we don't have the money in the budget
I know,
to do anything.
I know your 5-year projection, you've got them projected out there, but they're going to be sufficiently out. We've solved enough problems in those, so we don't have an emergency, or?
Well, 2 years out, we start paying off bonds, and we start having a whole lot of extra money, and there will be 2 choices in 2 years. One is to start just putting that money into more projects, or 2 is to do some bond issues, okay? And the 5-year projection that's there actually shows 2 bond issues, short-term bonds, to accelerate some of these high-priority projects faster. And whether you'd want to do that or not would depend, to me, a lot on interest rates and how serious we think those issues are. Again, we'll be paying off a bunch of bonds. Is it worth reissuing some bonds to accelerate these projects? And that's going to be a judgment call. And we can do either one without excessive rate increases. Now, I project that we're still going to have cost of living type rate increases, but without major rate increases to cover those, because we'll be freeing up so much revenue that's now being used to pay bonds.
That's what I'm worried about, is the rate increases. All of a sudden, we're hitting a 5% here, and then 10%, then 15%.
No, yeah, you'll look carefully at the multiple pages of the water fund projections, and you'll see that we don't have that in there, but we do have a lot of capital money.
Anybody else?
I guess, again, this is where, reminding the audience and the committee, this is where there was an projected increase of a plant operator.
Yeah, this is the single full-time position, and I've thought seriously about that the last few years. That it just finally was the straw that broke the camel's back. Increasing regulation, increasing demands on the system, and so on. It's stretching 3 people who occasionally have to operate that plant 24 hours a day, stretching 3 people to a limit that's beyond, I won't say it's beyond safe, but it's beyond the ability to continue that forever.
Anybody else?
If I may, is there a way to see how much it would cost to try to find the leaks? Is there any kind of mapping system that way?
No. What we have done, and recently our city council approved, and last year the budget committee approved $50,000 for better leak detection equipment. And we recently got authorized to spend that, research the equipment, tested equipment, and recently ordered the equipment to do that. And it'll enable us better to find those leaks. It's really going to be a matter of going neighborhood by neighborhood with this equipment and finding the leaks in that neighborhood and then fixing them. And the next time we come back to that neighborhood, there's going to be more leaks. Because what we're finding is, and particularly the service connections, so many of the service connections were put in substandard. I mean, we've got examples of things that, I'm telling you, it's just one step up from a garden hose.
And we have 6,000 of those connections.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's in the process of determining. I mean, it's a significant amount of loss.
Yeah. Yes.
But again, in fairness, and remind everybody that we've recognized this for a long time and took, I think, significant positive action of better equipment, right. And now that's ready to be employed.
The other thing that just recently happened, our water loss had been running right around 30%. I should say unaccounted for water. Some of that is going through meters that the meters aren't turning, and we're going to have to up our testing program on meters. And then there's leaks. That's loss. And recently, the combination of those two jumped from 30 to 40%. Hang on. And we... Yeah, that's what I did. And we recently and periodically test our production meter, meaning the meter, the water that leaves the plant. And it found it all of a sudden to have an error of 7 or 8%, and was not repairable. And so I've authorized the replacement of that. I think it's about $9,000. It's a 16-inch meter. Okay, and so we're pretty sure that the water loss hasn't increased. The meter just went bad. But it's the one meter that we can't go bad. So,
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I think it's worthy of note that when we were demonstrated, or when they came and demonstrated this new equipment we're talking about, that they went out just to show us, and they found a sizable leak with that equipment, which we couldn't find before.
Right.
And that was really momentous, actually, because it was a big leak.
yeah, it saved us 2 million gallons a month.
Yeah.
That's a lot of water. We're working hard on this, and the new equipment's going to help. But the thing that's the most discouraging is what we just heard, 6,000 connections, of which only those put in the last 5 or 10 years have been at maybe 10 or 15 years, at a standard of something we can expect the last 20, 30, 40 years. An awful lot that was put in there before that is leaking.
Anybody else?
And I'm sorry, I'm just going to chip in one more thing. When we do an overlay, they go in and assess the condition of every service connection, and sometimes replace every service connection before we do an overlay.
All right, let's move on to wastewater funds.
Mr. Chairman, it just raised a question for me on the page 28, because I've never heard, when we do have spills, and, as much as we might try, they do occur, as you've stated, for unfortunate reasons, but is there a cost? I know there's not goodwill cost with the citizen, but fines by DEQ, is there a, I guess my concern is an offset to, working on it versus we can no longer afford to go all out and, get us at a higher level?
Wow.
I guess depending on where the spill occurs would be part of the answer.
Well, we've not encountered fines because they've only occurred in situations that one, I think about 7 years ago, was an equipment failure that was beyond anything that we could predict. I mean, there's redundancy and such, and it just was outside, the stars just lined up. The other spills that we've had have been during really excessive rainfall, and so we have not been fined because of that. The cost that we experience is overtime cost in cleaning up and notifying area residents and so on. And we've been investing a huge amount in our lift stations but to reduce the frequency of spills, which if we get a 50-year rain event, we're going to have some spill, is going to take cutting down the infiltration. And until we get more TVing done and gauging we really don't know what that cost is going to be.
Well, and I'm remembering this in the last one. We had 8 inches of rain in a short period of time, and it just flooded the system.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I see that the talking about land acquisition to the biosolids. Is that the only option that we have, is putting it on land? Is there like a burning, or is there other ways we could locally dispose of that?
Well, we've looked pretty hard at that over many, many years, and there's a lot of different technologies. One is to dewater it and haul it to a landfill, a little more expensive. Another is to dewater it and then dry it. And in this climate,
is it going to
the energy cost of that, the technology would be about $1 million. Not a huge expense when you look at what we're spending every year to haul this stuff. But the energy cost of drying it, because we have only a few months, we can't find another economical solution. What we're doing now is fairly economical, is the most economical we could do now. My concern here is that we're going to lose the pasture land that we've got available to us now at essentially no cost because of the added value we put on it. We grow more grass. Is that I think we're going to lose that opportunity over time, and we have no guaranteed site that we can apply. So we've looked at it carefully. If you're really interested in that, come into our Public Works Department, ask for our Public Works Director, and they'll give you a lot of information that we've studied that on. It's a fascinating issue for sure.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
To show how far we've come, when I was about 18 or 19, I worked one summer for the city, and one of my jobs was to deal with the then City of Ocean Lake solid waste disposal site, which happened to be a flat up in the gully just north of the state park by the Deep River. So that's what happened 60 years ago.
We've come a long way.
The good old days.
You're glad I didn't buy that house down there.
That's a little bit of local history that very many people know
Now
about.
we know.
That is part of the problem.
I know.
Mr. Chairman? The other thing in that wastewater, I guess the last paragraph I found very enlightening as far as an opportunity, another revenue source. I guess I don't fully understand it. So what we're saying is there's a possibility. Again, we're just exploring opportunities, but we could try to recover some of our capital costs of building a wastewater plant.
Yeah, or we could use that revenue to cut down infiltration in the system, or further our capital program, or reimburse, lower the rates, lower the property tax. I mean, there was all kinds of options if we wanted to do that.
And the rationale of this is because our citizens inside the city limits, through their property taxes, pay for the bond?
They pay a portion of the bond through the property tax.
Versus an urban growth boundary user?
Yeah, it's a little more complicated than that, because all users outside the city pay double rate, okay? And they're going to tell you that covers, more than covers the loss of the property tax. In the particular should I get into this a little bit more? I don't mind.
We're running late.
Maybe
I think people are getting tired.
Okay. Maybe another time you could.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
I'd like to take a minute, the second to the last paragraph, laterals belonging to and connecting to the customer. Wastewater laterals belong to the customer, water laterals do not?
Well, water laterals from the meter to the house do belong to the customer.
Yes.
We maintain up to the meter.
Right. That's not the case with sewer?
No, the sewer line is the lateral connecting from the house to the main is the customers.
It's the customers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the reason. You don't meter
We
sewer.
don't meter sewer.
Moving on, tax levy and bond payments.
I think it's getting late.
Bravo, year and a half early. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Way to go, Ron Tierney.
And that would then reduce the debt service graft that Mr. Ricketts pointed out earlier.
Yeah, and reduces the property tax.
And reduces property taxes.
Excellent. Excellent. Good.
That was a $3 million, the open space bond we're referring to was a $3 million bond issue approved by the voters, and it'll be paid off a year and a half early.
Well done. Well done. In conclusion, any comments on Mr. Hawker's conclusion here?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for a very informative, pleasant discussion.
Here, here.
Thank you.
Hearing no further questions, no further comments.
Mr. Chair?
Chairman,
I just wanted to ask, before you adjourn, could we hold the public hearing for the state revenue sharing?
Yes.
Thank you.
You articulate that.
I don't think we won't have any problem with that, yeah.
Okay, we are holding this public hearing for the purpose of receiving citizens' comments on the use of state revenue sharing for fiscal year 2012-2013.
and what happens?
It's just an opportunity, if there are any public that want to provide comment, they can do so.
Is there any public that wants to comment?
I should go a little further than that.
Almost.
I'm sorry, this is what revenue? Let's make sure the hearing's complete.
This is the revenue that's referred to as the state sharing state shared revenues. It's part of the liquor tax revenues are allocated on two different formulas. It's one of the ways that is allocated. We are required to hold a public hearing in order to receive those revenues. Currently, those revenues go into our general fund, so we are holding this hearing to allow the public to comment on if we should accept it and how we should use it.
And so that would be the purpose of the public comment, would be we should not take it, or since we don't get a choice of taking more.
Not just should we take it. I mean, that's maybe a no-brainer, but what should we use it for? It's kind of
again
just a
because it goes
purpose.
into general fund.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
We don't earmark it. It's just part of the general fund revenue that supports all the services of the general fund.
Great. Thank you.
Once again, any public out there that wants to comment? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. I intend to adjourn the meeting unless there's an objection from the committee.
Just a question, is this it, or is there...
No. This is just the beginning.
Okay,
Well, it was
so
hard.
just clarify when and where next time.
So, yeah, I guess that's what, before we adjourn, the expectation is next Monday at 6 o'clock.
Next Monday, City Council, isn't it?
No, it's next Monday.
Yeah.
We get you, double dip you.
Yeah, this
Right.
is a week. There's 2 weeks between council meetings instead of just
The date
Is May 7th,
May 7th at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers.
and the plan would be to go through the hard numbers. Now,
That's what I assume.
yeah, again, ideally, and you should spend the next week kind of looking at those. Now, having more information from the narrative, there probably shouldn't be as many questions, and, it should move through.
Monday, yeah.
Here.
Is that 6 o'clock?
Yeah.
6 o'clock.
6. Good. 6 is better than 5. Alex,
Yeah, so that's so Alex could get here.
Hearing no objection, I adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you all. We're
I'll just carry it on.
You don't need to be here 5 minutes.
Good to meet you. We'll see you next Monday night, I guess.
You're a good man, Alex, for taking